Well, good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council.
Oh, this is going to be a good meeting tonight. I can tell.
I don't know. Good evening. Are you on? Roman, good evening. All right, I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council to order for Tuesday, April 9th, and we're going to start with a couple of proclamations. So we'll start out first with the National Library Week. Everybody's having a good time talking. So. If you would allow me to please get started and hold your conversation, if you would, or you're welcome to go out in the foyer and continue. National Library Week, whereas libraries offer the opportunity for everyone to connect with others, learn new skills, and pursue their passions, no matter where they are on life's journey. Libraries are accessible and inclusive places that promote a sense of local connection, advance understanding, civic engagement, and shared community goals. And whereas libraries have long served as trusted institutions striving to ensure equitable access to information and services for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. Libraries adapt to the ever-changing needs of the communities, developing and expanding collections, programs, and services that are as diverse as the populations they serve. And whereas libraries are treasured institutions that preserve our collective heritage and knowledge, safeguarding both physical and digital resources for the present and future generations, and whereas libraries are an essential public good and fundamental institutions in democratic societies, working to improve society, protect the right to education, literacy, and promote the free exchange of information and ideas for all. And whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Therefore, I, John A. Haliv, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim April 7th through the 13th, 2024 is National Library Week. During this week, I encourage all residents to visit their library and celebrate the adventures and opportunities libraries unlock for each of us every day. Ready, set, library. And it's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Library, Sheila Schofer, and she'll introduce some of her guests with us.
Thank you. Good evening. And thank you for that lovely proclamation. We know the value the library has, and we're grateful for having such a supportive community. I'm joined tonight by three of our board members, Brenda Thorpe-Weber, Matt Crane, and Ianca Mitchell-Conway. So thank you, and come out and see your library.
Yay.
And second, we have a proclamation regarding Fair Housing Month, and I asked Vanessa and her guests to come up here and join us.
Wayne. Hey.
Oh, hey.
Brandon?
Yeah, keep us outside on cap.
Absolutely.
That was up here, we got to outnumber.
I didn't come prepared to have my picture, but I'll get next to the lady.
He knows what to do.
Fair Housing Month. Whereas April is National Fair Housing Month, This year, we commemorate the 56th anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act, the landmark civil rights law signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson on April 11th, 1968, that made discrimination in housing transaction unlawful. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing because of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, disability, and familial status. During this time, we want to celebrate the Fair Housing Act and recommit ourselves to ensuring every American has access to housing that is free from discrimination. And whereas this year's Fair Housing Month theme is Fair Housing, the Act in Action, which reflects the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to advancing equity in housing and the importance of increasing public awareness of everyone's right to fair housing. And whereas the City of Ames additionally prohibits discrimination in the areas of housing, education, employment, public accommodations or services, credit, sexual orientation, developmental disability, physical disability, gender, and gender identity. And whereas equality of opportunity for all is a fundamental policy of this nation, state, county, and our city, and fair housing is a positive community good. And whereas only with the cooperation, commitment, and support from HUD, the city, the Ames Human Relations Commission, Central Iowa Board of Realtors, area housing providers, and all the residents of Ames and Story County can barriers to the enjoyment of this and other aspects of equality of opportunity for all be removed. Therefore, I, John A. Hale, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as Fair Housing Month and establish Ames Story County as an inclusive community committed to fair housing, and encourage all citizens of our community to support and endorse fair housing, reaffirm their commitment to fair housing for all, and wholeheartedly recognize these rights and responsibilities throughout the year. It's my honor to introduce Vanessa, and she'll introduce some of our very distinguished guests.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to recognize Fair Housing Month as a very important part of what we celebrate and encourage in our community. And one of the programs that we're going to be partnering with HUD and with the Central Iowa Board of Realtors is we're going to be hosting a Fair Housing opening ceremony on Thursday, April 11th here at City Hall from 1 to 2 o'clock. It's going to be a webinar, and we're inviting the public to attend, and we will have some treats over that time. If you want to attend, again, it's free here at City Hall on Thursday, April 11, 2024, from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. And also, I would like to give the opportunity for our HUD representative and our Central Iowa Board of Realtors representative and to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, my name is Julie Sleeper. I'm the State Director for HUD here in Iowa. I want to thank the Mayor and Vanessa and the City Council for allowing me to be present here today at this proclamation. I'm very excited about the commitment that the City of Ames has for fair housing every year. You have an important work to do, and it's part of your mission. And I applaud you for all of your efforts in trying to help with housing discrimination and reducing the amount of discrimination in your communities.
Well, I too would like to thank the City Council and Mayor Hala. My name is Beth Skluzacek, and I am with the Central Iowa Board of Realtors. And I also have some Realtors with me today representing just a variety of the companies here in Ames. I have Kathy Thompson, Nancy Marion, Justin Dodge, and Steve Bach. I'm very proud that they are here today to recognize this April 2024 as Fair Housing Month. Fair housing is at the very core of what we stand for within the Central Iowa Board of Realtors. We strive to provide equal, fair service to all members of our community here in Ames and beyond. So we look forward to meeting that commitment every month and having this proclamation and being able to serve alongside all of you.
Vanessa, did you give me a time? Okay. I'm Wayne Clinton. I'm the chair of the Ames Human Relations Commission, and we're honored again to be part of each year annually this proclamation and the efforts that the city is promoting and we're working along with the realtors and so forth to make sure that within our community that there is housing available to all the citizens that are in need. So I want to thank the mayor, the city council, and all city members and the various entities within our community that partner with us in this endeavor. And certainly the representative from HUD being here, that's also an honor for us as well. So thank you as well. So thank you. And don't forget the 11th, come on out in the afternoon. It should be a fun time and you'll learn a few things.
Thank you.
I think this is a great example of public-private partnerships. Appreciate Julie coming. This is the first time I can remember that we've had a representative from HUD actually at a proclamation. Thank you for coming up for that. And Board of Realtors, thank you. It takes you guys to help come alongside, and the Human Relations Commission. And thank you, Vanessa, for all your efforts as well, too. It takes a lot of work, and I think together we're going to accomplish our objectives. So with that, we'll do a little photo op, and we'll be done with this piece of the proclamation.
Squeeze in.
This one has a free brick.
Susan gets set up right away. The second song.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. Council, is there anyone that wishes to pull any item from consent tonight? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right, we'll move on to public forum. This is a time we set aside for members of the public to address city council on any item which is not on the agenda. Ask people to limit their comments to 3 minutes or less, and council will not take any action on your comments. So I see, Richard, you're interested in addressing council, so you can start.
Overwhelming.
Richard.
That's what it is.
Richard, that's not
Walking
city
the
business.
road.
Richard.
Mister, you ain't a walking that road. That road be a walking you. It is a kicking into your heels. It is a banging into your souls. It is a bursting into your blood and your bone and your skin, pulling you
Richard,
to
please
who?
stop.
People you don't know. People you never can. People understand. People you could love and fight and love and fight and love.
Richard. Do you have comments on city business? We'd love to hear it, Richard, but please, singing is not part of it.
The senior variety show is at the city auditorium.
Thank you, Richard. All right. Is there anybody else that's interested under public forum? I see there's a couple of people have signed up online for, oh, excuse me. Got to refresh my,
There's somebody out there.
Please. I apologize. I have a electronic sheet that I didn't refresh. So if you signed up, we'll have you come up after this lady.
This is my first time being here, so I'm kind of nervous.
That's quite all right. We don't, we love to hear what you have to say. If you just say your name, pull the mic down a little bit so we can hear you, and please feel free to start.
My name is Linda Aaron, and I live here in Ames. I've been living here for a long time. Forgive me. And this house, and I think it's great. It's a good idea. But I was wondering, what about the people that already have homes, but they need work done on their homes? I am one of them. I've been working I worked at Mary Greeley for 23 years. And then I went to our state. And I got sick, really sick. I have 2 boys. They both in high school, and they work a couple of hours a day because school is really important to me. I want them to get a real good education and go to college. I want grandkids one day too. And so my doctor told me I couldn't work anymore, that I have to stop because I have a problem. I get dizzy. And I'm about to cry because I loved it to work, but I had to give up my job on my doctor's advice. And I need things done in my house. And some of it is safety issues. My outlets and stuff, half of them don't even work. And when you try to pull it out, sparkles come out of it. And my garage look like it's about to fall down, and I don't have the means or the funds to get into these things fixed. And I was wondering whether there's any programs out there that can help me get these things fixed.
So I could do as you would, Brian, would you just get her name and phone number and address? And I think there are some programs that we can refer you to.
Okay.
To help you out. Okay.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
It's in the county as well as I'm not sure it's in the city, but the county. But I'm thinking of some that might be helpful. But if you give Brian over here your contact information, we'll have him follow up with you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for being nervous.
You know what? That's fine, and you did a great job.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wants to address council on their public forum? All right, seeing none, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item number 25, staff report on sidewalk safety program.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Justin Clausen, Public Works Operations. I've got John Joyner, the Public Works Director, with me here again tonight. We're bringing back to you the Sidewalk Safety Program. We were here in January, if you recall, the 23rd meeting. Gave you a quick background of what went on with the Sidewalk Safety Program, how we looked at complaints, how we took care of repairs and whatnot. Just a brief background that we are a complaint-based process right now. At that meeting, we also proposed some standards that council could consider for changes. At the end of that meeting, council asked us to get some public input and come back with a few options for other ideas that council had there. I show this slide here. If you recall, at the 23rd meeting, this is the proposed standards on top in the gray bar. The red bar are our current standards, and then there's some peer communities underneath there, and we can revisit this later in the meeting if you'd like to see this again. But regarding public input, we put together a survey. It was available online in February and March. We had 5 questions that really addressed 5 main topics that we brought out of the meeting from the 23rd. We had paper copies available for people too that weren't able to take the survey online. We were at a few different community events where that was available. All told, we got 486 responses. 98% of those respondents identified as residents, 5% were students, and 88% were property owners. So we'll go through the 5 questions that we asked and some of the responses here, and then we'll look at some of the feedback from that. So the questions we asked are: the proposed sidewalk safety standards too restrictive, about right, or not restrictive enough? So we showed the survey respondents what the standards look like and asked for their feedback on that. So as you can see, 60% responded about right, 13% not restrictive enough, and 27% was too restrictive. The second question we asked had to deal with our additional repair options. So if you recall, we have a really narrow scope. We only allow removal and replacement of sidewalk panels, and we allow very limited grinding. So we mentioned that we would like to look at partial repairs, some joint filling, more grinding options, and we asked the public for their feedback on that. As you can see, overwhelming support, 94% thought those were acceptable ideas. Then we polled the public about our complaint process. Should we utilize a complaint-based system or a proactive system? As you can see, it's about split down the middle with a slight lean to the complaint-based, which we currently use right now. A lot of our peer communities do utilize proactive processes, but that was what the public had said for us here. And then there was a question about anonymous reporting. As you recall, some of the impetus of what we brought back to council was a lot of anonymous reports that came through in the fall of 2023. So we asked the public, should we allow this in our Ames on the Go reporting app? And 74% said yes, 26% said no. And the final question we asked really had to do with subsidies. And we identified 3 major subsidy programs that are available from other communities. And of those 3, it was either an income-based, grant-based, or a cost-sharing. You can see the cost-sharing had the highest percentage at 47%, income-based at 28%, and grant-based at 15%. There was also 10% of the community that said we should offer no subsidies. I'll go through these subsidies a little bit more here in the presentation, but this is the results from the public input. We also had the ability for free comments. We wanted the public to give us their information, let us know what other things involved in the sidewalk safety program we needed to consider. So we had 234 comments out of that. I broke them down into about the 4 major ones that we got feedback on. The first one being respondents thought the city should pay for all sidewalk repairs, regardless of what happens. The second most popular comment had to do with tree damage. They said the city should pay for tree damage from city trees. Our current process right now is we still have the property owner repair the sidewalk from a damaged tree. While that happens, we will investigate the tree to see if it needs to come down. Is it diseased? Is there an issue with the tree? But if the city says the tree should stay and the property owner repairs the sidewalk, then if there is a failure of the sidewalk due to that tree the following time, the city will take care of that repair until that tree goes away. So we kind of be the backstop of it there. I kind of keep that in our GIS program so I know who I've talked to and what sidewalks we need to be respondent to that for. Third most popular comment was city should establish a contractor list. I do share contractors that have done this type of work when requested from the public. I can't recommend anybody to individuals, but we do have a listing of people that have pulled out permits, those that have done this kind of work. So when requested, we will share that with people so they know where to start the process. And the last thing that was the most populous comment was that the city should focus on infilling areas where no sidewalk exists. And while this is an important comment, staff really thinks that this comment really belongs in the walk, bike, roll workshop you're going to have next week. We'd really like to focus the sidewalk safety program on the maintenance of the existing infrastructure we have right now. So the sidewalks that are in place. Now, if council should take up and say we should do some sort of infill program, there might be some similarities in the 2 programs. But for tonight, we're going to just focus on the infrastructure that's in place. So one of the questions from council directly was how many miles of sidewalk we have in town, and if council decided to pursue a proactive system, what would that look like, and what could the city staff effectively take care of? So currently, we estimate 246.5 miles of sidewalk, and that's based off aerial photography and a little bit of manual manipulation with that. Staff recommends that if we were to go with that sort of program, 12 to 15 miles a year is a goal. We haven't done this sort of program before, so we don't have a good measuring stick. But what I can tell you is in calendar year 23, we did almost 11 miles of sidewalks. That was extremely busy for staff, and it was busy for our local contractors as well. So we kind of use that as a gauge to say where we're at. We think there's some efficiencies that can be gained if we're going to investigate everything at one time rather than just piecemeal as it comes in. Communities that have proactive programs claim to not have the large number of complaints that we've seen. So I thought that was an important note, and especially on the anonymous side of reporting. They all allow anonymous reporting, but they don't have the big influx of reports like we saw. So in terms of subsidies, as we mentioned earlier, there are three main subsidies, and then one more at the end, which is not probably a subsidy, but just an option that we talked about with fully city funded. So the first one is income-based, and this system right here is based off income levels of the applicant. You must qualify. There's a certain amount of money set forward. The repair costs have to be approved before the applicant can apply for the subsidy. And the repairs are funded at 100%. So the cost of all the repairs will be taken care of for anybody that's approved. This sort of subsidy is available in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids. The larger cities seem to have this type of subsidy program available for their citizens. The second program wasn't extremely common, but we did find certain instances of it. It's just a grant-based program. Again, it's a set-aside of program or set-aside of funding. You have to apply to the program and have multiple bids to ensure cost effectiveness for the city. And it's all on a first come, first served basis. So if you have $10,000 and you everyone comes in with $2,000 bids, those first five applicants get a subsidy, and the sixth one would not in that program. Repairs in this type of program are funded at 100% as well. But in this program, council could establish priorities. You could say that we would like to see certain areas of town or certain routes be the priority for what we look for in this funding. The most common subsidy is cost sharing, and it's really similar to the grant-based program. There's a set amount of funding set aside, but here the city pays for only a portion of the repairs. And the city also establishes a unit rate that says if there's a certain amount of sidewalk that needs to be done, we will pay for a certain amount of repairs. And typically they cap this repair. This example here, 35% of a cost at a standard of $12 per square foot. This is from Cedar Rapids. But they have a maximum subsidy amount of $1,000 per property that people that apply. And then the fourth option I'd tell you about is fully city funded repairs. It's really difficult to put a number on this. We don't obviously have a great inventory of all the sidewalk in town. Again, going back to calendar year 2023, that 10.7 miles of sidewalk that we inspected, 5% of it needed repair. Our average costs were $25 per square foot. So that would equal close to $300,000 of funding that would need to be identified. A couple of things to remember about this example here. The inspections that we did in 2023 were primarily in what I would call newer areas. It's Somerset and Prairie View East and West. There aren't established neighborhoods with maybe larger trees that we might see some more issues with. On the flip side of that, the repair costs we have there are only for removal and replacement. They don't consider the more cost-effective repairs that we would like council to look at. So there's two sides there. That the percentage of needing repair could go up, but the cost could go down. So this is something that the $25 per square foot, it's really challenging for contractors if there's only 1 or 2 squares of sidewalk to take care of. That unit price goes way up. So obviously there's a scale of economy that you get the more sidewalk you have to repair. So through all these options, I think it's important to remember that the income-based, the grant-based, and the cost-sharing, the applicant finds a contractor, the applicant coordinates the work, and then they're reimbursed at whatever rate is established from the city. In the city-funded option, the city would find the contractor, coordinate the work, et cetera. So there is still more burden on the homeowners in the subsidy options. It's important to point out that funding options would have an impact on other things that we have to do from a maintenance standpoint. If we have other things in the transportation system that need to be funded, if we're using those sort of funds, it obviously lowers our ability to repair streets, shared use paths, that sort of stuff. So I think it's an important thing to keep in mind as we consider this. In our peer communities that we looked at, the subsidy options were limited to owner-occupied residential properties only. There was no subsidy allowed for rental properties or for commercial properties. We would expect any subsidy program that the council may want us to look at would only look at the sidewalk panels that need repaired. So if I had 20 panels in front of my house and only 3 of them were defective, but I don't like new concrete and old concrete side by side, I think it's an aesthetic thing, the subsidy would only apply to those 3 panels. I could still choose to do the entire length of the sidewalk, but that's where we would narrow our scope to. And an important thing here is the peer communities do allow the property owner to wait if they've run out of funding for that year in the subsidy program. So if you were that 6th person in the example I gave earlier and there's no funding, they do allow them to wait. We think there's some possible liability that we would need to explore before we really want to go down that path, knowing that there's something out there for repair that we haven't acted upon. Now we do a little bit of that right now with allowing people to, a little more time to repair if I've notified them right now. But most of the time when I look at that as I'm looking for positive progress towards repair, let me know you've got a contractor, let me know their expected date. If it's outside of our 90 days, if it's going to be 110, that's okay. We're still making progress down that path. But I think it's an important thing to remember too as we move forward. So for tonight, we're looking for input on really 3 main things here. First is the defect standards from the January 23rd meeting. Council can either consider those changes or reaffirm our current standards. That will give us direction on where to go with the existing sidewalks and what our standards for inspection will be. The second thing is really the investigation type. Should we continue with a complaint-based program, or should we begin some sort of proactive approach? And if so, what sort of goals is council looking for in that proactive approach? And finally, the subsidy option. If council has interest in subsidizing repairs, what sort of program are you interested in, and funding levels, and how that might work for you? So I'll turn it over to council with any questions you might have, and look forward to it.
Thank you, Justin. Questions?
Justin, can you go back one slide? So the 3rd bullet regarding liability concerns, do we really think that the city would have liability for this, or would this be something that we would need to warn property owners that there would be liability possibly if they did not make the repairs?
I think I'd like to research that a little more. I know there has been some recent Iowa Supreme Court cases that have brought some liability to cities, but I don't know the exact detail as it relates to this yet. We haven't really explored that. I would probably wait to explore a little more before I give you that feedback. But I think there would be liability from the property owner, and as we say, there may be some for the city.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Can you go back to the next slide now? Yeah, thanks. Just for the audience.
Do you have a question or no?
No.
Oh,
This is just the ending slide.
got it. Sorry. All right, we'll open up public input. I have Rhea Knert has signed up to address council, and after that, anyone else who's interested in doing so. And if you just introduce yourself, and you may proceed.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rhea Kynard. I live at 619 8th Street in the old part, the part that nobody looked at the sidewalks of. It's great that they're looking at new properties, but we have old trees in Old Town and Roosevelt neighborhood. And, we're Tree City, USA. We've got signs that proclaim this, but yet we penalize the people that have the trees because it raises up the sidewalk. I think that I felt hamstrung by this for years. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. And I think the Iowa culture is such that we're expecting people to rat out their neighbors is not going to happen very often. People don't do that here very much. So I think it makes it easy for things to just go on the way they are because people won't do the complaint basis. I think the inspections are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wishes to address council on the sidewalk safety program? All right, seeing none, we'll close public input. And council, any closing questions? Otherwise, there's 3 specific directions that staff is looking for tonight.
And the one about the changes to the defect standards, that both could or we could do it separately, allow for the repair options.
We can, yes, we can absolutely take input on that. However you'd like to see it. If you want to see one or the other, if you want to keep the standards the same but allow more repair options,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's also an option. Okay.
Yes.
Because I like the idea of allowing some repair. I think that seems reasonable. I don't know, but maybe council has thoughts about the standards changes too.
When we talk about the standards changes, are we referring to the comparison chart with the proposed?
Yes, I'm going to go back to
Yeah.
that right there.
So I'm assuming that we're also maybe not considering offering the subsidies, or yes or no on the subsidies at this point, but we're looking at the standards that are applied.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct. I think the left-hand side of that chart more than anything, and if council decided they want subsidies, obviously we could modify that chart to whatever you decide tonight.
Right. Same with
The inspection.
the
Yes.
complaint versus inspection.
Exactly.
So-
This, in all honesty, this graph was taken from the 23rd report before we had this
Mhm.
conversation, so it's the same one.
So it'll be all of the columns except for the
inspection
inspection
frequency
frequency and then,
and the subsidies column.
Correct.
Those are
Yep.
to be determined in just a second.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the staff's asking, do you wish to stay at the current standards or change them to what's being proposed or something different?
I would move that we accept the new standards proposed by staff.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, move to second. Discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, next let's talk about whether there is complaint-based only or proactive inspection.
You
Well,
want-
I was going to ask a question, if there is the option to have both in some form, to have both complaint-based, but then also perhaps even as work is being done around the city on particular streets, to decide to look at those sidewalks at the same time. So is there an option for a combination of both complaint-based as well as proactive?
I believe there's an option. I think maybe if I may, we, even with the proactive program, I assume we will still get some complaints. There will still be something that is not in an area that we are inspecting that someone will find that probably needs attention. We would still notify and serve those properties.
Okay.
So if you were to select a proactive process, we're still going to deal with complaints the same. I think the proactive process would allow us and allow council to see a more systemic approach across the city, so we get everything done at some point in time. To your comment about if we're doing work in an area, that would probably something we would look at how we put the proactive system together. One thing I will caution council on, we have currently 405 complaints that we're waiting on, basically that from tonight. That's more than a year's worth of complaints for us. So even if we decide tonight a proactive approach, I would caution council that we're going to need to get through this backlog first, and that maybe our proactive approach really maybe starts next fall into the winter, because that would be the best time for us to look at and inspect all these sidewalks, notify property owners, give them time to work with contractors and get things lined up. Obviously, construction season in Iowa is, April to November. So that would be the way I envision it in my head working. So did I answer your question then?
You did, thank you.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Justin, would there be an assumption that at some point you would come back to council with a plan for prioritizing how much you did in a year, or would that just be an operations decision?
My preference would be for us to have flexibility in that. Obviously, if council wants that level of detail, we can do that. The reason I hesitate on that is there are things that happen sometime with our CIP programs and our CIP project that it might make more sense to instead of going counterclockwise around the city, it might be a little bit of a hodgepodge while we kind of catch up and find that out. That might, I would like the flexibility to change that as the needs arise and what we find out there. So if you'd prefer to see it back, we can certainly do that. But I think giving staff some flexibility to make sure if you told us 12 miles per year, we'll find the 12 miles in the best approach that we can.
I don't have necessarily a preference on whether it comes back to us, but I am conscious of some of the feedback that we've gotten over the years. You know, why is this neighborhood being targeted for whatever? Or as in Ria's case, why isn't this neighborhood, Old Town, being looked at because those are the oldest sidewalks? And so I would just appreciate that staff maybe takes those kinds of comments into consideration when prioritizing, so that it's not all newer neighborhoods that are getting the focus, or maybe it's not all one neighborhood that's getting the focus.
I think I would take if you had if you decided to use a proactive approach, and if you had some input of saying I would like to see you start in Old Town, for example, or for or wherever, give us some priorities. We can look at starting a program in there and work our way out to the best our ability that works, that sort of stuff. I would take that sort of input as well.
But I would have a point of reference, as I'm hesitant about that. Most people don't realize the way in which we evaluate streets for repair. And I could not be any prouder of this. And John, correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but we make decisions on street repair and replacement based on the conditions of the street, not because of how fancy the neighborhood is or how old. That's not a factor. It's a research based on the conditions. And that's not the way it is in all parts of the country. You should know that. And I'm very proud of the way we do our streets here. Everybody should be. And it seems like there should be some consistency in our philosophy of street maintenance with our philosophy of how we approach the sidewalks. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge on sidewalks is with our streets and even shared use paths, those other infrastructure that we have good inventories on that. I don't have that on sidewalks. And so that would be my biggest challenge. But we could utilize similar methodology to say if a street is seeing distress, it's likely that maybe the sidewalks in the same area are. And there's a possibility that I could see some synergies going together, where if we're going to have a concrete replacement project in a certain area, it might make sense to include that in our X amount of miles that we're looking at, because there's already a contractor there. There might be a way that we can really assist citizens to say, if you'd like to participate, here's a contractor. They've already bid stuff to the city. That's where I think the flexibility on our end would be beneficial, that we would try to synergize those together as best we can. Did that answer that?
Oh, very well. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, perfect.
And that's a possibility that we could arrange, and I'm seeing this sort of as another form of subsidy, really. If we let homeowners know they might be able to get in on a project, and maybe that larger project brings down costs for everyone involved.
I've seen that in neighborhoods where certain blocks have gone through and got the same contractor because they want to get a better price. And that's absolutely true for contracting. And we could certainly make that part of the program as we go through this. You know, we're going to need some time to develop this and what it looks like. And I think if council's willing to give us that time working into the fall, we can probably have a program together where we say, you know, these are the neighborhoods we're going to look at. Let them know in advance. And then if we have a contractor going into that area, or if we have a project going into that area, we can ensure that, hey, here's the people to contact if you'd like to get involved with it. Or if you prefer to have your own contractor, you still have that option.
I like that.
All right, is there a motion on direction regarding whether it's complaint-based, proactive inspection, or a hybrid?
I move that we ask staff to come up with a policy for proactive inspection.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. And would that be abolishing the complaint
No.
based also, or it would be complaints would still be received by Ames on the Go?
Well, I guess I understood that what Justin said, there would still be complaints coming in, but this in some ways would be a parallel approach.
It'd be additional. Okay, all right.
And did you have a goal in mind for the amount, like the miles of sidewalks? Staff had recommended 12 to 15, but is that, you're leaving that up to
I
staff?
am.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
So it's going to depend on year to year on staffing and
Yeah.
capacity.
Fine, perfect.
Those who have a motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. And the last direction they liked is whether or not to be any kind of subsidies. And Justin presented a variety of different options.
Do we need to identify which subsidies, or do we just need to say we are interested in subsidies?
Well, I think that they
I
would
don't-
probably, it'd be
yeah.
beneficial, I think, to have some kind of deal. Are you talking about income-based? Are you talking about cost sharing? Are you talking about grants?
Once you come
Yes.
up with that, we've
Everything
gotta
but
go
the
back.
last one.
Yes, that is what I'm thinking too.
Which one?
So some combination of all of them, except not necessarily
city.
fully city funded. But income-based, yes, we should look into that, absolutely. But then even so, maybe some other mechanisms. Maybe we could start with income-based first. That'd be my highest priority. I would move we direct staff to develop a plan or do research and develop a system for income-based subsidy.
I would second that.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim.
so I was just looking at the grant-based, and when I think income-based, I'm thinking low and moderate income, and so I'm also thinking CDBG,
Yes.
but that's grant-based, not income-based, or is it income-based?
It's
It's
both.
income. Well, one of the ways to look at it is tying into our CDBG program.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
But so does that fit with Bronwyn's motion, or is
Yes.
that
Yes.
the other bullet?
No.
No, it would be,
This isn't federal grants. This is basically the city giving a grant versus,
No.
That-
no, she was going to go with income-based, right?
right.
It's
Yeah.
an income-based grant.
But I'm trying to
yes.
answer her question.
Sorry. Yes.
Go ahead. Ask your question again, please, Gloria.
So if we are interested in having CDBG money available, is that an income-based subsidy or a grant-based subsidy?
Well, a grant is a subsidy, so it's income-based subsidy, which in the form of a grant.
In this context, when we say grant-based, what we're referring to is first come, first serve. So when
Okay.
we say income-based, it's income-based grants.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
All right.
It's like you're
Yeah.
an English professor.
Justin, could you put the comparison of sidewalk safety standards chart up again? So, in terms of the offers of subsidies, only Cedar Rapids participates and does something like this. Is that correct?
And
Des Moines.
Des Moines as well.
And, oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yep, right near the top.
So those would be a couple of programs we could look to see how they work, maybe some model language. But nationally, this is a fairly novel thing. Is that true, Steve? Or
What is
the idea?
subsidy?
Right.
Subsidizing
Sidewalks.
sidewalk repairs? I haven't looked at it nationally, but
Isn't it true that nationally, some places actually require cities to own the sidewalks? And so
Well-
there isn't really a good point of
I believe
comparison?
you're correct. It varies by
it's
state
different- it
law.
varies.
Yeah.
And so we could look, I have not looked nationally, Tim, in all honesty, but it does vary because in state of Iowa, the Iowa code says that the abutting property owner maintains a sidewalk,
it's
and then
different.
the city code echoes that. I know Minnesota has some things, for example, especially in snow and ice control, that the city takes care of some of that. So I think it's going to vary, but I know there are other places that have subsidies. I haven't researched it, but we can certainly look into that.
And the source of funding, we've talked about CDBG, but
Yeah.
at this point, do we know where the funds would come from?
Well, I'd look first if it's going to be income-based, because we could leverage federal funding through the CBG program for that. If you want to do broader than income-based, you're going to have to look at property tax increase, local option tax, which has competing projects, road use tax has competing projects, and even property tax has competing projects. So when you tell us if we're going to do a totally grant-based out of our own funds, we'll have to go back and look at our whole capital improvements plan and see, we'll have to show you how much money you want to spend. Are you going to, it's like I did my budget guideline session with the public. Do you want to add to the property taxes or do you want to cut back on another area? And we'll have to make that kind of trade-off.
So I
Probably the income base is the easiest one if you want to leverage outside funding as a beginning. We're not saying that's the end of the project. Otherwise, you're going to compete against ourselves on other priorities.
So I'm going to be supportive of this, but the easy thing is to say we would like to have some kind of subsidy. That's the easy part. The more challenging part is, to your point, is where will the funds come from, and will that cause us to do trade-offs in other capital projects? So I think that's the harder conversation. And so when you bring that back, will you be bringing back options for how we pay for this?
No, because, let me do it again, the motion I think is for income-based only as a first step.
But where will, and I appreciate that, but where will the funds come from for the subsidy?
Let me emphasize again, I think we'll look first, probably when Vanessa comes up, we'll ask you to modify her program to put some money aside for that, because it's geared for that. It's geared for handling low and moderate income people. Infrastructure. Remember, she's done that before.
So let's just call this the CDBG pot of money.
Yes.
So, but normally she has an allocation of that. So if we spend money on the sidewalks, then that means we don't have money for other things.
We're gonna show you where it's got to come out of. Yeah, that's right.
So
We'll show you where it comes out of.
tonight, we're not saying for sure we're going to do this.
No.
What we're saying is we would like staff to bring us back options. We conceivably could look at the option and say, well, if it means that trade-off, then that's not a trade-off we're willing to do.
That's right. Although what we'll probably have to do, since we've got to go ahead and approve her programs later, in the time we'll have to do that, delaying it, we'll probably ask you if this is the priority to make some changes in that program, but you can always go back and undo that if you don't like it. Understand?
Okay.
And return it to where she originally has it in her staff report.
Okay, that's
All right.
very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Everyone understand the motion?
Yes.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Anything else, Justin or John, that you need tonight from us? I think those are the 3 points were identified in your report as being line direction from council.
Nope, I think we got it. We will
So
modify.
I did have two other things. Because we
Okay.
talked about whether we're going to offer flexibility in repairs. Did we give you that direction tonight?
Oh,
I don't think we did.
I
that
thought
was
we
meant
gave
to
them
be wrapped into
previously.
the staff proposal on the first part.
You mean the alternate repairs? Why don't you make a
If
motion
you'd
that-
like to explicitly do that,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah, why
great.
don't you do this week on the
Because I
record?
think all we did was you just affected the standards.
Yes.
I would like to give us more flexibility for homeowners to do the grinding and other sort of adequate repairs. So how do I word that motion?
I believe if you asked us to approve the alternate repairs as in the January 23rd staff report, because we had them in that staff report.
Can you repeat what those are?
Yes, it's joint filling, it's additional grinding, and it is partial panel repair.
Leveling,
And leveling.
What was that, John? Another one?
leveling.
Okay.
Leveling, yeah.
Wasn't that already,
Checking it.
wasn't that already approved at the last meeting?
Well, we're doing it.
I don't think we approved of that. I think
Okay,
we tabled,
that's
but-
why I thought that there'd been a motion to go ahead and approve that approach, but then come back with the standards. But go ahead. So if it's not been approved, you want to get that on record then?
Yeah, if you want to get that on record, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I move that we ask staff to come back to us with, or maybe I should just say, should we just go ahead and put it in place?
I think you just approve it.
So I move that we approve the alternative methods of repair as
As-
outlined in the report.
In which report?
January 23rd.
Yes,
That's in lieu of total replacement.
correct.
It's a less costly option.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any comments?
I mean, that by itself, we talk about the cost for homeowners. I went out to a homeowner in Somerset and we walked the neighborhoods and the number of panels in that area was unbelievable that had to be replaced. But in many of those situations, had there just been some greater flexibility in these repairs, it would have saved a lot of those panels having to be replaced. So I think this is a common sense approach.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Something else you had a question on?
Well, and so on the issue of the, on the complaints, we currently have an anonymous complaint system. And I'm curious if council is content with that situation. This spike, and Justin, I didn't ask you to come prepared to show this. Do you happen to have that slide that shows the increase in reports? Because people may not have seen this. It's pretty interesting. And so this is very helpful where it's showing a fairly modest number of requests. And then in 2023, this huge spike.
Okay. Did you have something else to say, Brian?
I was going to say, my guess on that is that is someone who is trying to make a point about our sidewalk policy. My guess is that that number is going to go back down to normal now that we've adopted a proactive enforcement approach. I think that was a point that someone was trying to make to drive us to do proactive enforcement. That was the way those reports were coming in. It was clearly one person who was like, report on the app. I mean, you can't see who it is, but I get those alerts when someone in my neighborhood reports a thing, and they were just like ping, 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 ping. So it's clearly someone trying to make some sort of point. I hope that our decisions tonight will return us to a normal number there.
So what if they don't? And then we're asking staff then to continue this process. Now, the good news is because we've adjusted the guidelines, then of the number that would have been legitimate complaints a year ago, some of those won't be now.
Right.
But
I'm sure staff would come back to us then and say, oh, we can't handle it. And then we'll make a different decision.
I'd like to draw the close to close this topic. If you'd like to make a motion, Tim, that's fine. But I'd like to cut off the conversation. We've been on this for almost 45 minutes, and we have a lot of things on the agenda. People are here for other things on the agenda too. So is there a motion you'd like to make, Tim? If you are, please go ahead and make the motion.
Sure.
Otherwise-
I don't think this system is working. And what I would like to do is, and maybe I could ask staff if it's possible, that the complaint would be anonymous to the public. So if someone feels like they are nervous about making a complaint in a way that would be intimidating, they don't want the public to know about that. But I would like for staff to be able to know. Is it possible that it could be known to the staff? Do we have the technology to do that?
I'm not sure our provider allows that. We can ask. I think last time I checked, it was not coded that way. That doesn't mean we can't request that be changed from them. Right now, C-Click-Fix, I don't believe allows it to be anonymous to the public and known to the city.
So then it's pointless to make a motion if it's not technically possible.
We can check with the software provider. Also, we discussed with the city attorney last year, and we are allowed to keep that information as staff from public information. So we could, if it's possible, find out as staff who are making the complaints. But other people that call in, I want to know who made the complaint about my property. And visiting with Mark, we do not have to give that information out.
I think the only way we can do it is C-Click-Fix is build as a social site to where you can see someone has complained in your neighborhood. The only way it can work is if we hide sidewalk complaints so you can't see it from the public. We can see it internally, but the public can't see that someone complained about that sidewalk.
Well, again, I'm sort of in a spot where it doesn't make sense to make a motion for something that's not technically possible. Is it permissible, Mayor, if we could ask the staff just to see if it's technically feasible, and then we could decide whether to move forward on that?
I'll make a motion to that effect. That's fine.
So I just move that we would ask staff to inquire from the vendor if that's even technically possible, to find out if we could bifurcate the anonymity such that the staff could know the identity, but the public would not.
Is there a second? Motion died for lack of second. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to item number 26, request for accommodation for Kiwanis trailer at 803 and 919 East Lincoln Way.
Like it says right there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Benjamin.
Several months ago, council received communication from the local Kiwanis Club regarding a paper trailer at 803 and 919 East Lincoln Way. The trailer has been parked across the common property line and is parked on gravel, which was poured several years ago. New.
Mic closer.
Is that good? Okay.
There you go.
Sorry. The Kiwanis paper trailer parked at 803 and 919 East Lincoln Way discovered several code violations, and staff communicated with Kiwanis about the code violations, the gravel, and the truck parked across the property line. We met with Kiwanis several times to discuss resolving the issue. The setbacks for that zoning district are 12 feet. Both properties are in the GI zoning district, and all new parking and driveway areas do have to be paved with asphalt or concrete. Kiwanis did reach out to the neighboring property, Overflow Thrift, which is moving to the east property, and did not come to a resolution in discussions, and also talked to Ames Resource Recovery about the possibility of relocating their trailer there, but could not come to an agreement. There are several options that Kiwanis has right now, including coming into compliance with the code, paving of the property, paving of the driveway. Kiwanis feels is not feasible because of the cost. The site could also be, or the trailer could also be moved to another property, either onto Overflow or to possibly to find another location within the city. There are several options that council could take regarding the request from Kiwanis. The setbacks and the paving of the driveway, staff does not feel are standards that should be considered for changing, because those are universal across the city. There is currently no exception process either for this. There's no variance that would address something as specific as this particular issue, and it the issue is not what the majority of the property is used for, the paper trailer collection, but the way that commercial zoning standards work. There typically is no accessory structure the way we have accessory uses in residential that allow for reduced setbacks either. And it's possible to create an exception process, which would be one of the possibilities for resolving Kiwanis' requests, but staff would need to take a further look at that to come to a way that we could do that.
Would you elaborate on what you mean by the exception process, please?
Meaning that we could create a way in which we do currently have exception processes in the code. It's different than a variance. A variance requires you to prove a hardship, and there's a high legal burden for that. The exception process outlines a number of different areas of the code where you can apply to the Board of Adjustment for relief from a particular standard, and there are very specific criteria that are laid out for each individual exception.
What would it take to accomplish that? What do you need to do? Changing an ordinance? What do we have to do?
It would need to be a text amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Questions?
Benjamin, on option 1, I'm just trying to get a picture of this in my mind. So Kiwanis can move the trailer 12 feet from the side property line. Are you talking, which side property are we talking about? Are we talking about the Overflow property, or are we talking about the property to the west?
Either one. They both have the same setback.
You have an image you could put up there.
It's your turn. Yeah, that one.
There it was. Came up, then it went away.
You zoom out a little bit, Susan, please. Thank you.
Okay, so there's the trailer. What does option one describe as far as moving that trailer is concerned?
It would need to be 12 feet away from that property line.
Well, can you point it out to me? Because I still don't know what that property line means in terms of moving it.
The diagonal black
So
line?
it can move to either side of that line. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So in general industrial, the side setback is 12 feet. Both properties are zoned general industrial. And outdoor storage must meet the same setbacks as a building.
So as I understand it, there have been discussions with overflow that have not met a resolution. So let's assume they can't move the trailer to the overflow side of the property line. What's happening with the other side of the property line? Have there been discussions with that side of the property line?
To the east.
They would need to find a spot where you could park it on pavement. The appeal of the overflow site is there is lots of pavement that is available.
I understand the appeal, but if overflow hasn't reached a resolution with Kiwanis, I don't know what we can do because we can't force the property owner to come to an agreement. So I'm just trying to ascertain whether, is there that option on the other side or not?
Yes, they could choose to, either add pavement or find a spot on that property that is within 12 feet, that, complies with the setbacks and complies with the paving requirement.
But at this point, there hasn't been a discussion with the other property owner. Is that right?
I believe the representatives are here this evening from Kiwanis. I don't know that they have pursued that
Okay.
specifically.
Let someone else answer that question.
Let me give you the cut to the chase on that one. There's no spot on the Cenex gas station site that meets the standards. So that's why they haven't just moved it.
Okay.
So not that it could not be done, it just is not readily.
What's the standard they
accomplished.
can't meet on a paved area?
Well, they don't have paved area and they don't have the setback. And then the operations of that site have certain access, the maneuvering that they use now for different gas pumps and stuff. So it's just not as simple as move it 12 feet. It could be done, but that hasn't been able to be done yet.
Okay, well, so let's assume then, option one is currently not available because there is no resolution to the overflow discussion. Is that true of option two as well?
That there's no resolution.
This is,
Yeah. Are you looking under?
I'm
say
looking at
option
page
two,
89 in our packet. I don't know what number that is on
So it
the,
must be that one under options too.
okay, regarding the north gravel parking lot?
yes.
Well, that would have to be paved as well, because that is also not paved. There were two gravel areas, but the north one does not pertain to Kiwanis. That was not their doing.
That's the one on the Cenex property.
Yes, both of them are on the Cenex property. There are two separate gravel parking lots that were.
But there haven't been any discussions with Cenex. I'm just trying to ascertain what we have the right to do. We can't tell overflow what to do with their property. So going through the process of creating an exception seems like we're ahead of the process. And the same would be true with the Cenex property if there haven't been any discussions about whether Cenex would be willing to allow this to happen. So I guess I'm trying to understand how we can
I would say
do
let the
those.
Kiwanis representatives represent their conversations with these two properties, and that probably shed some light on what avenues you have in front of you.
That would make sense.
Other questions before we open up public input? All right, open up public comment, and Jeff, you want to come up and he's asked to address council, and then after that, if anyone else wants to address council, they're welcome to do so. So Jeff, please come on up. And I think you probably heard the questions. Maybe you can answer those questions as part of your comments, and then usually we don't allow a back and forth question and answer, but that might be more expedient. But let's go ahead and offer your comments and input and answer questions. We'll see where we go from there.
Okay. My name is Jeff Witt. I live at 2101 Polk Drive here in Ames, and I'm here representing Ames Golden K Kiwanis. First of all, this is a small deal for you guys. It's a big deal for us. It's big for the kids. On behalf of us, I'd like to thank the mayor, city council, staff for all your efforts in working through this and trying to help us out. 2 comments before I get into your questions. Little history. The trailer has been there in that area since 2012. It was originally located along the property line in the grass. And then the north property, which is to the right, was sold a number of years ago. And that new property owner asked us to relocate the trailer to where it is now. And then we put the trailer there. Kiwanis put the gravel there. We didn't get permits or didn't do the stuff we're supposed to do. We understand that. We apologize for that. And I mentioned this last time, the recycling operation meets a lot of your goals for climate, your climate action plan, that type of thing. It's a good thing for the community. And staff has identified 2 issues. So the setback issue, which is what you've been talking about so far. The trailer sits across 2 properties. We've looked at relocating it to the east property, 803 property. There's really no place to do that on the pavement that doesn't disrupt their operation. They've got gas pumps there. They're bringing semis and trucks in there to fill up diesel fuel. The buildings are rented. There's activity there. So anywhere we put the trailer on the pavement is a problem for them. We have been talking to Overflow. They are receptive. They want us to replace the stairs that people use to access the trailer, which isn't a big deal. It's probably under $1,000. They want to limit the hours the trailer is open, so we'd have to open and close it every day, which is problematic from a logistics standpoint for us. And there's some insurance things and stuff we have to talk about. We haven't got that far yet. They are still receptive. They're kind of wanting to see where this goes. Both property owners would like the trailer to stay where it is. They think that's a good thing. Both property owners support that. Obviously, that could change someday, or the property could be sold and the new owner not want us there. We understand that, and we would commit to leaving at that point if that happened. The second item, the gravel areas. So we get the code issues with the gravel. We understand, that's a requirement as put in the staff memo. Parking lots should be paved or driveway should be paved to cut the dust down, tracking dirt, mud on the streets, that kind of thing. We'd like to point out that there is no traffic on this gravel. The trailer sits there. We move the trailer 2 or 3 times a year when it gets full. The customers that come stay on the pavement the whole time. They park on the pavement, they walk into the trailer, they never get on the gravel. And if you go down East Lincoln Way, this is pretty insignificant amount of gravel compared to the rest of properties on East Lincoln Way. So I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but so where we're at is we are asking for some consideration in grandfathering a variance. Doesn't sound like that's the right term, whatever that might be, to stay there. If that's possible, that would be great. We are still working with Overflow. We've also talked to other folks that haven't found any alternatives. If we cannot find an alternative and council doesn't allow us to stay, we will ultimately need to shut down the operation. So that's what I said. I don't know if I answered your questions on
I have a follow-up to that. And given what you said,
okay,
So with the continuing discussions with overflow, does that mean that if you left the trailer where it is now, let's assume we granted an exception, that overflow would still want the things that they currently have said they want, which is being able to shut down the trailer to limited hours and having insurance and putting in the steps?
No.
If you left it where it is now, they wouldn't
They're
have.
not concerned with that at this. Okay.
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes.
And there's also a logistical thing. They're just opening here in May.
Mhm.
So they don't know their logistics. So they're a little hesitant of spotting a semi-trailer out there until they figure that all out.
Go ahead, Tim.
So first of all, thank you to the Kiwanis for what you do in the community. It's amazing, and you're all volunteers and doing phenomenal good. Just one pragmatic question. I'm a pragmatist. Have you looked at anywhere else in the community that you could put this trailer where we wouldn't be having to go through these gymnastics?
We have talked, as staff said, we have talked with Resource Recovery, thought that would be a good partnership. We reached out to Ames Park and Rec and one of their facilities, putting it there, that they weren't really interested in working with us. We've talked to Electric Services. They have properties around. We've talked with city departments. We have not talked with private people. And the trailer needs to be out on East Lincoln Way somewhere in an more industrial area. You don't want that at the mall. You don't want that kind of thing, I don't think.
Sure, but it just seems like there are lots of options on East Lincoln Way. There's a lot of commercial property.
Yes.
I was just curious if you'd reached out to any of the property owners.
We have
on East
not.
Lincoln Way.
We have not.
Okay. And this process of granting an exception seems like low-hanging fruit for us to be able to pull this off. If we were to do that, would that give you what you would need to continue from your perspective if we were to create that as a process?
Well, now, wouldn't that depend upon staff coming back and helping us set something up that actually calls for speculation on his part? I mean,
I can't answer that. And keep in mind that we don't own the properties. So if we got to go through some zoning thing or something like that, the property owners have to do that. We can't do that. We are there because the owners of the west property granted us permission to be there and want us to be there.
Yeah, well, I wasn't asking you to speculate, but maybe my question is better for Kelly. Would the applicant for an exception have to be the property owner, or?
Tim, let's any other questions for Jeff
No.
first, and then we'll have more public input, and then we
Okay.
can go ahead and follow up with
Okay.
the exception. Is there any questions for Jeff?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you again for all your
Thanks.
putting up with us, I guess.
We're not putting up with you, and I echo Tim's comments. Thank you for what Kiwanis does, and all the money you earn from this goes back into the community. So, does anybody else want to offer comment on this before we close public input? All right, we'll close public comment. All right, now, Tim, you want to ask Kelly about the exception?
Yeah, so that interaction sort of clarified. Now I'm a little bit confused in terms of, I think Jeff made a good point that normally it's the property owner who would make that application. In this case, because they're be a beneficiary of that exception, could they file the application for an exception, or would it have to be the property owner?
Typically, if someone has a lease interest, that's enough. You know,
Right.
to be the property owner. I doubt they actually have a lease. I mean, we're talking about a signature on an application that says I authorize this application to be submitted on behalf of, and they can be technically the applicant, but the owner signs the application.
Okay.
The owner does not have to do the work, if that's what we're getting at. Kiwanis can be the applicant. You just need property owner authorization. And the exception application, if that's where we end up, it's a fairly straightforward application. That'll probably be 4 or 5 questions explaining the circumstances. The ZBA will judge the conditions about compatibility to some degree. If that's how it goes, it's about a 2 to 3 week time period of notice and getting to a board.
Okay, thanks.
Is that exception policy or process in place now, or that's what needs to be done if council wishes to pursue that?
An exception to do this does not exist. Exceptions in general exist. So it's adding into Article 15 that you could ask for outdoor storage to have an exception to setback and improvement requirements. And then the ZBA would judge the need for that.
And this council has been very careful about what kind of unintended consequences or unexpected things that could happen if that was put in the code. Can you offer an opinion on that?
Well, I think the good part is in this case, it's a permit. So there is no, each one will be judged on their individual merits by the ZBA. And the way we've described this, it's not for everything. It's just if you have outdoor storage and you have a reason that you'd have to justify why this case, right, that the property line's kind of odd. There's other situations on the site. There's probably some good rationale to grant it, but everybody would have to make their own case. It's not deleting standards. It's giving someone a permit.
And would that exception be limited to GI only, or is that, or
It can be, and it would probably make the most sense because that's where outdoor storage is the most common kind of use to occur on these properties. Some other zones allow it, but GI is your most common location for it. Like it's probably not a significant issue to be anywhere else, but it could be other places, I guess.
But it would certainly reduce the amount of potential unintended consequences.
Yeah, I don't see unintended consequences because it's an individual permit for an individual property, and you have to go to a public hearing to get it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and if you would,
Please go ahead.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we create an exception process for Article 15 as Kelly has laid out.
Second.
All right, we have seconded. Any further discussion?
So my concern with this is just that we aren't hearing overflow in this discussion. And it sounds like they're waiting for us to do something, which doesn't seem like the usual way that we would be handling property owners for an exception like this. And I completely understand this situation now, and, you know, nothing against Kiwanis at all. I think it's a great effort to raise funds, but it just seems very backwards to be having us approve this when the property owner hasn't been in this discussion. I almost feel like we're putting pressure on overflow to agree because we would allow the exception of approval.
So this has to go to ZBA, correct?
So yeah, so how this,
So they would have an
motion carries.
opportunity to object, right?
They could, and even though we create this permit, I mean, how this actually fits on the site and everything, I mean, it can't cross the property. Like this picture can't be approved the way it is. It can get close to that, but it's not going to be literally how it is on this picture. So the Kiwanis and the Cenex person will have to look at this a little bit, come up with some kind of siting diagram to go with that. Overflow will still have to deal with the gravel that's on their property. The Cenex site also has issues to deal with regardless of the Kiwanis paper trailer. So those two things will get rectified sometime this summer. No code enforcement will happen while we're going through the process of creating the permit and them applying for the permit. If you really wanted to, you could defer taking any action and ask for a resolution from overflow. It's going to take 2 months to get through all the application steps and code changes by the council if we do this.
So my point on this, what Jeff said is spot on. This is a small deal for us and a big deal for them. And I don't think it's a big deal for anyone else in the entire community. We need to fix this for Kiwanis. They're an amazing organization. And even if Overflow decides they pull the plug on this, at least we've tried to create a path for Kiwanis. I want to err on the side of doing the right thing in this matter. So
All right.
hope we pass this.
Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next steps, Kelly, will be
So next step would be starting with the P&Z to create a zoning text amendment. We won't be back to you until the actual ordinance is here for approval. It's not of significance enough to go through options with you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to item number 27, plats of survey for rural boundary line adjustments within Boone County.
Yes, the two properties here are in Boone County within the urban fringe on opposite sides of 220th Street. The Ames Plan 2040 has policies regarding subdividing properties in the urban fringe. Existing farmsteads are allowed to be broken off onto small lots, and then all the other parcels should be at least 35 acres. This proposed subdivision does comply with that. Initially, in discussions with staff, the applicant, who is here tonight, did indicate that he was okay with having a agricultural use restriction across the property. In further discussions, it became clear that one of the parcels the applicant would like to construct a house on in line with Boone County zoning. And staff is therefore recommending alternative one, which would approve the plots of survey without a agricultural use limit on the particular parcel that where the applicant would like to construct a home.
Do you happen to have a map? Oh, is that what? Trying.
The east parcel there is where the applicant would like to construct a home. This is on the north side of 220th.
Where's the current one? The current farmstead?
It's the small parcel right there,
Oh, I see. So
parcel A,
just to the east of that.
on the large parcel C, yes.
I see.
So in the packet, there's an LVS Farms north property and south property. So is the south property just shown for information, but there's no discussion being on that parcel, or is there something else going on with that as well?
There's a boundary line adjustment on the south property as well. That is all agricultural.
So you're being asked to approve two separate plats of survey tonight, one on the north side of the street and one on the south side of the street.
And this attachment that you're showing is for the north side of the street.
Yeah, the main issue at question is that proposed parcel C and whether there's a no build limit or a limitation on the house being placed on that.
So parcel C is shown as 92.34 acres net, correct?
Yes.
Where does the 35 acres come in that you're talking about, or minimum 35 acres?
It's a policy in our comp plan, and it really came from Story County agricultural zoning. They have a minimum lot size of 35 acres. So we use that in our comp plan to mimic essentially the Story County version of a minimum lot size in an ag zone. Boone County is different than Story County, but our policy is the same in terms of size.
So they subdivided again? Or would parcel C remain 90 some acres and they would be allowed to build one house on that 90 acre parcel?
One house on the entire parcel C, according to Boone County zoning. They could build a second one that had to be rented to family, but the policy is for the zoning for Boone is single family.
Benjamin, would you mind being able to put up the
Yeah.
picture that shows people the context of where this is? And my question on these kind of things, my inclination is to try to find ways to say yes. But if I think about the law of unintended consequences, as we think about the potential development, this property is located in an area fairly close to where we currently have housing. So is there anything that we should be thinking about as a council just because of its proximity to an existing development that would have a bearing on this analysis?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
No.
I mean, it's over a mile from the city limits.
So could you show again on this, could you, with a pen or something, just indicate where this is? Maybe
City. Subject property.
okay. So what's straight south?
So to the southwest is a Boone County rural subdivision.
Okay.
And then further south is Lincoln Highway and some commercial.
Yeah, and I apologize. So not the city limits to the east, but you've got a subdivision to the south, right? And so if this was in isolation, let me try it this way. If this question was in isolation in its own universe, then that's one answer. But if it's in proximity to existing residential areas, should that change anything for us in our decision-making matrix?
I'll answer for Ames Plan 24. The answer would be no. We're not looking at rural subdivision adjacencies. We're looking at potential to thwart the city to realize its land use goals for growth and expansion. So this is in the urban reserve because it's within 2 miles. It's not a growth area, right? We didn't draw the line saying we're going to grow this far in the immediate term, but it was within that longer term horizon. So we made it urban reserve to look for compatibility and protection. We didn't say you're within a half a mile of a rural subdivision, therefore we should do more rural subdivisions. That was not any time a thought process we employed. So our expansion, our growth area, if you're thinking about how we're planning about growth, we are looking at our growth areas to the southeast of this a little bit. It's closer to the south parcel on X Avenue.
Right.
That's what, maybe within a quarter mile of our planned growth area. And then those north parcels are quite a bit further away from the planned growth of the city.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about long-term. I don't want to do something inadvertent that could impact future decisions. I don't want to limit future decisions. So anything that, and maybe the answer is no, but I'm not hearing any strong warnings of things that we should be considering for the future of the city of Ames.
My first priority would be the south parcels, which they've agreed to agricultural uses on, because those are closer and more central to areas that we're focused on. The further north properties, especially the very north areas, right. I don't know that we're ever going to get there.
Right.
But the south is our biggest concern.
But there are, I apologize, you're not giving us any warnings about things that we should be considering as to the south plat survey?
We are not, because they say they're for agricultural purposes and they're amenable to that condition. So they're not meant to be divided and developed with housing.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? I open a public comment. Is there anyone present wants to address council? And you're welcome to do so if you'd introduce yourself, and you may begin.
My name is Dan Sandsgaard. I'm the owner of the property, and we basically got a 90-acre chunk. Our existing acreage is on the west side. Do you want to put up that other? Okay. This would be our existing property here, and we're just asking for 4 acres right here for our son to build a house. I mean, just to simplify it.
For it to be separate from the ag, because we don't want it developed. They don't want it developed. We only have 2 sons, and this is going to be theirs someday. So we will have 1 acreage for one son and 1 acreage for another son, and they're going to share the ag land.
So can I just clarify that really quick?
Sure.
So technically tonight, what they're talking about for the second home or the new home, that's not being carved into a separate parcel. It would just go on parcel C. They may or may not ask to change that in the future, but that would be a separate plating decision and see if that met council's policies. We've said currently we would not support dividing that because that's not the way Plan 2040 is written right now. So parcel C, they're asking to allow a house on the 92 acres, like you said, Mayor. In the future, if they ask to divide that, it would have to come back again to City Council for review.
So just to cut to the chase, if that is what I think it's helpful to know if they're interested in subdividing and peeling off 4 acres, we'd hate to see approving this and all of a sudden say, no, you can't do the 4 acres. Is that correct?
Well, that has already been approved. That was approved last fall. Building a house on parcel C, right?
Yeah, the issue isn't whether or not building, it's breaking it off, he was saying, into a smaller
Right,
separate parcel.
That was our
sub-C.
request
Mhm.
to have that new acreage separate, 3 to 4 acres from the ag as a separate parcel.
So, does it have to be?
No, but otherwise it's all coded ag. And then if our son sells his house, he's got to sell the field with it.
Well, I
Just to be clear,
apologize. I
tonight,
misunderstood.
though, what is proposed is parcel C is a 92 acre parcel. And there's the part that's 4 acres is where the existing house is. on 220th Street.
But what I heard them say was that they wanted to carve off in the southeast corner of that 90 acres, another 4-acre tract in order to build a house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so I'm saying city's policy is to not do that for new houses because it would drop below the 35-acre minimum lot size that we look at for rural lots. And that would be only subsequent to the construction of a new house.
So, I'm sorry, it seems to me that the report seems to be not consistent with what they're asking for. And if that's the case, it would.
But the plat that is the exhibit that is being asked to approve is for a 92-acre parcel. There is no proposed plat that shows a future parcel for approval. I know we've talked about that with you, but that is not what was submitted as
No, I thought that's why Ben submitted this, so we could ask for that exception. For that separate parcel.
So may I suggest that maybe we just hit the pause on this?
I think we need to table this.
Your surveyor created that survey. We didn't create that survey. And so
Right.
if there's a desire to do something else, then that something else isn't on our agenda tonight.
Right.
The surveying that was done was to divide the ground between me and my sisters,
Right.
which included this piece, across the road.
Mhm.
I'm just going to have
Parcel
from
C.
here to here,
Yeah.
up to the tracks.
All right, so I apologize, maybe I confused the issue. What specifically is on the agenda tonight that council's being asked to be considered? And if it's not consistent with what they were thinking was going to be on the agenda, then I would think that to table this item to get clarity and come back, so there's not like we pass one thing and then you come back in 2 weeks or 4 weeks and the answer is no, and all of a sudden we just spend a lot of time, because there seems to be some confusion.
So let me clarify. So alternative one, so this is the only plat that we see up here on the north side. It is proposing to have an A, B, and a C parcel created. So there's roughly a 4-acre piece for the existing home that's there. Parcel B is a 67-acre piece with nothing on it. Parcel C is about 92 acres with nothing on it. Alternative one is to approve that plat, but not prohibit the construction of a new home on C. It does not address whether it could be divided again in the future.
That lets them build a
That would be a
house.
separate request in the future.
But if I'm hearing the concern correctly, the concern is that if a house is built there, there wouldn't be the ability to sell that separate from the rest of the lot. Is that what I'm also hearing?
If it's on a 92-acre piece of land, yes.
Okay. And can I ask, is that what you thought was happening tonight?
Tonight, no.
Okay, thank you.
And can I ask one other question? This is hypothetical. If that request were to build the house on a 35-acre carve-out on this, that would meet our Plan 2040 guidelines, and we wouldn't have concerns with the size of the parcel?
So generally Ames Plan 2040 does not want to create new development parcels in the urban fringe, the urban reserve overlay. We talk about how if it's over 35 acres, that's the minimum lot size. We're not going to have controls on what that use is. But we also say we don't want to see successive divisions of creating houses and breaking off small pieces in succession. So there's two different concepts there, but generally if you're over 35 acres, the city council typically would approve that lot being created and probably not have any use restrictions on it. I can't say we've seen that very commonly. Usually it's to come in and break off something that's smaller, and that's typically an existing house, not a planned house or a to-be constructed house.
But that kind of carve out for 35 acres would enable the rest to stay ag and then the house parcel to be sold separately in the future.
Yes.
Theoretically.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to try and understand those proportions and where the problem comes in. So it's the size of the parcel. We have to have the larger parcel size.
So Plan 2040 suggests that council would have to waive those policies and approve a plat to do anything less than 35 acres.
Okay.
And we have a policy to do that for existing houses. That's why the piece in the middle is of no issue to us from a policy perspective.
So the matter before council tonight is approving the subdivision right now, and with the understanding that they can go ahead and, if they want, and build a house on a 90-acre piece of ground with no problem whatsoever. Whether or not the council would approve in the future a further subdivision to another 4-acre piece in the corner or adjacent to their house, whatever, that's a different matter altogether. So council could go ahead and approve, or take action on this alternative relative to the plat of survey and all the subdividing, but it's not accomplishing everything that they wanted to accomplish.
That sounds, based on what they just said, yes, I would agree with everything you just said, Mayor.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, this is, yes, please go ahead.
In order to accomplish the second parcel in the south, would you prefer we go back to the surveyor to reflect that on this?
I'll ask Kelly what
should they do?
What process will they go through if they want to do that and come before council?
It would be the same process that got you to tonight. We would look at a plat that proposed property lines, and we would apply the exact same policies to it and bring it to you exactly like we did tonight to say it does or does not meet policies, and do you want to waive any standards to allow for it to be approved?
But it doesn't, it doesn't meet.
But
We're telling you now.
So it's-
So anything less
Not
than
gonna be
35 acres would not meet Ames Plan 2040 minimum lot size requirements, except for when there's an existing house that's part of that. So if they came back with a 35-acre piece and a 57-acre piece out of parcel C, that would probably meet Ames Plan 2040 minimum lot size requirements and could be approved. Anything below 35 would require council to waive a policy or to waive an expectation of some type.
So this item could be acted on, and they could come back again if they wanted to and either ask for the 4-acre or ask for a 35-acre subdivision again at a future council meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a downside to us acting on this tonight, given that we know that the property owners are viewing this in a different way?
I would say, it's already been prepared as this. So from a effort on as the applicant, this already exists. So if you approve it, they don't have to record it. They can decide if they want to take the action that you approved and record it, or if they're going to propose something else and never record this plat, that could also happen. But remember, there's two plats. We're talking about the north and the south. So I would look at them as two separate actions and not combine them as one. So there's no downside to approving it because they have the choice of whether to actually record the survey that was approved or to resubmit something else.
It seems to me if there's no downside to us taking action tonight, it simply opens the way for you to decide whether you want to go with that and file the plat, or whether you want to come back with something else, that we might as well take action on it tonight. And then you can decide where you want to go from there. Yeah, because it doesn't lock you into anything, as long as you haven't filed the plat. Did I accurately reflect what you just said, Kelly? Okay.
So it's the first time in 7 years, but I'm going to actually ask the applicant, do you want to have council table this item and you think about it, or move forward? But I'd like to get this item moving on the agenda. So it's up to you. And the point is, it can come it just gets tabled and it comes back at a later time if you want to have more understanding or understand your options. I think council's willing to go ahead and move on this as is, and we move forward. It does help. I think it helps subdivide some of the property already, which is already in place. But it's obviously not accomplishing what I think you want to accomplish. It's your call.
Table it.
Yeah.
We'll table it.
All right.
Come back.
All right. Very good.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I don't want to give an impression. I don't want to hold out false hope that that it's gonna be exactly
I
as they
understand.
want it
I
to
agree
be.
with you. Thank you for clarifying
So
that. It's
I-
not saying that it's
and
going
I-
to be a favorable response. It's just they can still come back and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and just keep it the way it is and still file it the way it is. But yeah, it doesn't, just because we're tabling it doesn't
Okay.
mean that all of a sudden you'll get a 4-acre corner.
Yeah, I
out.
just want to make
So
make
you're
sure
aware of
that,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that it's not, we're not giving some sort of false hope that that 4-acre thing is somehow going to meet our policies. So-
Correct.
Well, we know it doesn't meet the policy,
Oh, sure.
but because of the use of the land is why the exception. It's not going to be agriculture. It's going to be a house.
The only reason I suggest this is because I think there's confusion on what they were expecting and the staff report.
Sure.
And I'm not blaming anybody. It's just, I think there's confusion. So to me, it seems like
Sure.
it seems more appropriate to table it, get it clear, and then it could even come back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Just as is, and you move on. There's no new staff report necessary. It's just taking the same staff report, but at least gives you an opportunity. And in my opinion, I think it's better to try and do it all in one fell swoop. If you're going to try and go for this 4 acres and they say no, then you know there's the answer as well too.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to table?
Can I just
Move it,
clarify,
Nicholas.
on a motion to table, does that officially then have to come to a meeting to be moved off the table to then be put on an agenda? Or are we tabling it to a specific? I just want to understand exactly what tabled is going to mean in terms of the procedural requirements.
I would suggest that it be tabled until the applicant asks for it to be put on a future agenda. Would that be appropriate?
So when they communicate with staff about what they want to come back with, then staff will bring it and put it back on an agenda.
Correct. And if
Okay,
they
it's
don't
not
come back at
officially
all,
Tabled and all that.
that way it's not like putting
Yes.
time constraints on them or on staff essentially.
All right, that's what I wanted to understand.
Good question.
It's balls in their court, basically.
Yes.
So that is my motion. Did you
Second.
get that, Grace?
All the ands and ums, all that kind of stuff too. All right, good. You're good. All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. Move on to item number 28, proposed 2024-2029 consolidated plan, 5-year goals. Kelly and Miss Vanessa.
It's going to be Miss Vanessa.
All right, here she comes.
I'm sitting here for efficiency to get to the next item.
There you go.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, before you, you have our proposed 24-29 consolidated plan, 5-year goals, and our 24-25 annual action plan proposed projects for our community development block grant and home programs. And as you recall, back in February is when we did our first workshop with council and the community to try to look at our previous goals and come up with any adjustments or changes we'd like to have to our current goals. And then later on, staff had some public forums with the public to look at what action plan projects that we would need to look at that would kind of match those goals. And so before you tonight is a combination of both of those workshop and public forum comments. And as you can see on page 2 of your council action form, based on all of the above information from that workshop and looking at our fair housing impediment study and the data from our CHAS and from our community ACS, we proposed that this would be the 5-year goals. Now, council, you have to understand, and I think you know this, over the years, our biggest issue in Ames for our CDBG has been creating more affordable housing and catching up with that. So the data from the feedback that we got from the Fair Housing Impediment Study and the data from HUD still suggest that we're still on that trajectory to try to and then increase the amount of affordable housing and reduce the rent burden and cost burden for renters and homeowners. So we propose that that 5-year plan would be 2 categories because we have to address low and moderate income households and non-low and moderate income households. And to try to make it concise so that it's not too wordy, but it kind of is broad enough where we can accomplish a lot of our action plans from this goals. We continue to want to stress that utilizing and leveraging our CDBG and home funds through public, nonprofit, and public partnerships, private, nonprofit, and public partnerships to create and expand sustainable affordable housing for low and moderate income households through the following outcomes: increasing the supply of single-family and multifamily housing in our neighborhood revitalization and citywide, reduce the cost burden for low-income households to access or maintain rental housing and or homeownership in both our NRSA and citywide, to strengthen our neighborhoods by implementing housing programs and services, including acquiring, demolishing, and rehabilitating housing units that support homeowners, home buyers, and renters in obtaining and remaining in affordable housing, and to strengthen neighborhoods by implementing programs that increase or improve public facilities, infrastructure, and services in low and moderate income census tracts. So that it would be the goal that we would be looking at over the next 5 years to address our low and moderate income families. And then the second goal is to create and expand sustainable, affordable housing for non-low income households through the following outcomes: integrate affordable and market rate residential developments, remove blight and deteriorated housing into reuse into new housing, support and address code enforcement of deteriorated housing, and remove blight and slum and deteriorated housing in our floodplains and other hazardous areas. Again, staff believes these goals are easily understood and broad enough to allow the flexibility and variety to implement annual action plans from the 5-year period. So is there any questions or comments about the 5-year goals?
These would cover so with the sidewalk discussion, we had thought about maybe the potential of looking into CBDG funding.
Very good.
And these would cover that though, because they mention infrastructure. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay.
That as improved public facilities, infrastructure, and services in low and moderate income census tracts.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But to clarify, and I was going to ask the question too. I appreciate Brian asking this. So if we were to wrap that program into CDBG, then we would be looking at some kind of trade-off. We couldn't do both sidewalks and something. We'd have to balance these different competing
Yeah, we'll
interests.
show you next on the actual first program, the first year program, how we would do it.
Yeah.
You vote on the goals first, right?
Right.
Yes. So it is in the goals that this goal would cover any type of public facilities and infrastructure improvements. That would include sidewalks, streets, all of those kind of things. And we certainly have done those programs in the past: sidewalks, handicap accessible sidewalks in neighborhoods and so forth. So yes, that
And
would
that's the way
cover
it's
that.
written. Does it have to be in, the census tracts are going to be by individual homeowners?
It could be both. It's a little hard, specifically if you're talking about sidewalks, we would designate it in census tracts, but we can try to come up with a program that would address people individually, because we'd have to determine that individual's
Income.
income.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's not exclusive to those census tracts, so the program can be wider to the individuals.
This is correct.
They'd have
And
to
we-
qualify, I understand, by their income qualification.
Right, and we can increase that line to say in individuals, households, if you feel comfortable with that.
I would do that, probably, if it's okay.
And Vanessa, does that use of the funds for the sidewalks, if we were to go that direction, allow you to perhaps have a little bit more flexibility on things that might be considered shovel-ready projects, if necessary, when we're trying to meet our timeliness deadlines?
Certainly, if we partner with Public Works on our public infrastructure improvements that we've done in the past, they really help me manage getting funds spent because they do all the front leg work for us as far as bidding and plans and specs and things like that. And I just come in with some dollars.
Okay.
So with the 5-year goals, with the addition of under low and moderate income, and actually you could probably put that in both non and low income, as far as saying low income census tracts and individual households, if that's your preference.
Mhm.
So moved.
Good. Yes. Second.
Is that your preference?
Do you want a motion on that?
Just
To add individual households to the right after census tracts.
Sure.
I would move that we add that language.
Second.
Okay.
On both low income and non-low income?
I think we were primarily thinking low
Low
income.
income.
Low income.
Okay.
Based on
Sounds
our other
good.
conversation,
All
low
right.
income.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All
right.
All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. So the next step was, again, the annual action plan. When we again went out for public forums to get feedback, and we had some participation, and we just kind of explained the program again and what our guidelines are, what our priorities are, and we try to get feedback as to what the public is thinking that might be a need that matches those goals. And as you can see in the report, the feedback we got from the public was the need for assistance with deposit, rent, and utilities, home buyer assistance, basically down payment, mitigation assistance, which is damage repair, which is very close to our housing rehab program, tenant landlord education, rehabilitation assistance for nonprofits, expanded marketing, outreach to ISU student populations, and social media. So again, as we took all of those comments into consideration, and then also looking at the goals, looking at the council goals, and also looking at the feasibility of being able to get these projects done, what we have proposed for 24-25 is based on our 23-24 goals, because we have not yet received our 24-25 allocation. So we don't know what those dollars are going to look like. So what you see in front of you now is we're just proposing the current 23-24 dollars until we know what those new allocations are going to be. And then we can come back and adjust accordingly these dollars. So we have, again, the deposit and first month's rental assistance. Again, you having home buyer education, creating a single family housing rehab program, and using our home dollars for a tenant-based rental assistance program. And also we have been taking a little slice off of our home dollars to create up enough funds to build our own single family house out at the Baker subdivision. And so those were kind of the programs that we were suggesting for our 24-25 annual action plan.
So those were prepared before we just had this discussion. So if you want to have this discussion on adding in, Vanessa could correct me, but unless we have this sidewalk or how she wants to entitle it a public infrastructure broader, we can't change it later on. But if we put that category in there and put a dollar amount in there, if we don't want to use it, we can always move up to $100,000 into another category, move it back. Is that what your policy is?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you one more question.
Reallocate it.
Let me ask you one more question. Does the requirement have a certain percentage that can be of your total that can go to public infrastructure? Is there a maximum percentage?
No, sir.
Okay. So if you want to do that, what I'd suggest you do is, Tim, this is where it would come from, okay? You may not like it, but I don't think we want to touch the housing rehab, right? That's an important project. We want to keep that at 150.
Just for reference, you're on page.
I'm sorry, it's 111.
Page 111, attachment H.
That's the program. Now, it's difficult to know how much we'll need for sidewalk, but knowing that if it's less, we can always move it back into the programs. I want to keep it real simple, if Vanessa is okay with that. Under the deposit and monthly assistance, we'd reduce that by, we would keep $100,000 in there. So we take out 48.8, you see that? And then for the second one, the down payment, we take 796. So we keep 100,000 there. I got to add those two together. What are those two add together? The 48, Kelly, you got that? I'll do it here. It's 48.
97, 586, 96.
Was it?
Like 97 something?
It's 48, 800 and then 48, 796, right? What did they come up to?
96, 796.
I would just show that under, is it, what do you want to call it? Public infrastructure? Is that good enough to
Yeah,
call it?
public infrastructure improvement programs.
So we keep 100 back in the rental assistance. We keep 100 in the down payment. If later on you don't want to use that 97, you want us to come up with some other one, we can move those funds back into the original project, right?
Certainly, but there's also another funding source as well. And that would be from our program income when we sell properties.
When you sell.
Oh, we're not projecting the program income in these
No,
totals?
sir.
Just the allocation.
This is just the allocation.
Oh, well, so what do you think, knowing that? Should we, is it still okay?
Yes. I'm
Just leave it
saying-
like this?
Yeah. I'm just saying that that could be another funding source to increase it
Okay.
from what the adjustment you just made.
Or go back and restore it in those other areas too, right?
Correct. Either one of those.
So you don't have a problem doing what I just said?
No, sir.
And again, I'm just guessing the 97,000, we don't even know the magnitude of the request for the sidewalk yet, right?
Right.
Just putting some money in there. We needed more, we can move more money in, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Vanessa, I have a question. So this is not a zero-sum game. So we've got this line item. The reason why you chose 148,796 for home buyer assistance and then same amount for the single family, I'm sorry, for the
Rental, first month.
rental assistance. The reason why you chose those amounts is because of past utilization. So were you presuming that those funds would be used?
Well, really, the reason why we did it is because we're using the current year's dollars and we don't know what the new dollars are going to be. So we just,
No, I apologize. So I know you don't, but these are based on prior utilizations in some ways. I mean, the reason why you're selecting those amounts is because people have used those programs.
yes, to the tune that we have not quite ever spent 148 on our deposit of first month's rent program. It was just, again, a base until we know what our new allocations are. But we've normally had about 100,000 in that program.
Spent.
Maybe the question that you're asking is how much was spent in those first two
Correct.
categories last year, for sake of discussion.
Yeah.
So for last year, we did not implement the deposit and first month's rent program.
Got it.
So we can go back a year before that and we spent about almost 100,000.
And how about the home buyers assistance
The
program?
home buyer assistance program, we haven't spent any dollars at yet because again, those monies was geared toward helping people with the new subdivision. So we haven't done a citywide down payment and closing cost assistance program because we've been saving those dollars for that
Well,
subdivision.
this is pretty conservative. So how much revenue do you, revenue do you have that we're not counting here to be conservative?
Oh,
That we
if
could add
we-
back to these other categories.
If we sell properties, we could easily have another 100,000 plus.
So all I'm hearing is the home buyer assistance program is a new program, so there is no data to go back and look at as what was being spent. And the home rental assistance program was about 100,000. So what Steve was proposing to pull 48 from both of those essentially would get you about what you spent previously and in a program that has never been expended before.
Correct. And also, we're still rolling over money
But the revenue
from
could
the
bolster
last
that.
year.
Correct. Correct.
She's been very
I think Tim's
conservative.
question was,
Yeah, what we-
what's the historical spending on these categories? And we're just trying to summarize that. So, okay.
We've got
And
some
the reason why it
flexibility.
wasn't happening because we were spending a lot of our time doing our CARES funding.
We have
Which was
flexibility,
very
but-
similar to rental assistance, and that's where all of our time has been spent the last 2 years. That's why that number was not there, because we were spending our CARES dollars with rental assistance.
Yeah. So we have some flexibility, but we can't use these funds unless we put this program in this,
Okay.
in your motion of some amount, right?
Correct. I mean, this would be the time to add it so that when we start writing the plan and getting ready for public comment, because our time frame is kind of tight at the end. So this would be the time to add any additional programs.
So I'll go ahead and make, for the sake of discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we add a line item for the sidewalk, what do we call it? The
Subsidy program?
Do you want to call it, you want to keep it broader? Do you want to call it public infrastructure?
I would call it public infrastructure
That
program.
gives her more flexibility in
Okay.
case there's another
It's
project.
very broad, so we can do more than just
You could do
sidewalks.
streets
Yeah.
or curbs or something.
Okay. Or let
I move that.
Do you want to read CDBG Public Infrastructure Program, Improvement Program?
Mm-hmm.
And you need me to indicate an amount?
Yes.
So 100,000.
$97,596 is what the city manager suggested.
Well, I was trying to keep you 100,000 of all those other categories.
All right. I was going to say that. That's the amount.
97,596.
Second.
Okay.
The only thing, it's just sort of tricky business. We don't normally do budgeting on the fly like this. And so we just need to trust Vanessa that if there are people that we are not end up serving because of this, please let us know. I mean, so we're sort of counting on you to let us know that if there are unintended consequences. But I think this is the right thing to do to create a placeholder for this program.
Okay. So those pair of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Any other discussion on the changes to the proposed action plan, projects, and budget? Attachment H, page 111. All right, hearing none. I was looking for the chart of the 5-year consolidated plan, the goals. Can you point me to where that was at in the packet? Because I saw a variety of former ones, but I saw
The
that
very first one is our current one.
the 20, that's
And
attachment.
then the one that's in the council action form is the one that was at the discussion. It's not an attachment. It's actually in the action form.
Got it. I'm sorry.
Right,
Got it.
page 2. of
Page
council
2.
action form.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Thank you. All right. All right, I'm going to open up public input. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this before there is action taken officially on adoption of these items? Loris, please.
Laura Solson, President, Home Allies, Buchanan Drive in Ames. I attended both of the sessions, did miss one input session, that was it. I think staff did a good job of carrying a lot of information over, but every time you carry information over, sometimes things get edited through. I'm a little unclear about one of those goals for the rehabilitation assistance for nonprofits. That could mean a couple of different things. My concern is what's not here is really truly the addition of any new housing, whether it's Home Allies that does it or Hunsaker and Associates that do it, anyone who does it. Home Allies and I have been very, very involved lately in trying to look and see what's available out there, not only because of this, but I've been following the asset situation very closely. And I have some big concerns come July 1st about capacity of agencies. And so I've been looking for what could we do. And I've even gone to open houses. We considered making an offer on a house because we're still having problems with the interest rates on the 8-plex. Did anything to help put some people in housing, even if it's temporary housing. And I'm concerned that a 5-year plan is here and doesn't reference that very core bit, that we're starting to have more people that are not having housing again. I don't have empirical data right now. In fact, I'm thinking maybe I'd like to make some calls to the various agencies and find out what waiting lists look like at the Bridge Home, et cetera, if they can share that information. But you can go from an anecdotal standpoint and start looking at social media, and those posts are on social media again. My friend is losing his house. My cousin and her 2 kids are sleeping on the car, and that's here in Ames residents. So I'd like you to consider, I know we've got a 30-day input period. You don't have to do anything wild tonight, okay? But really consider that what it comes down to, it's really talking about some people. And we're starting to get people again who can't find housing. And with a shift on the asset side about people who are losing their housing, who may end up in motels at $70 plus a night, that's not a really sustainable model to move forward either. And so could we spend our money wisely? I know what it's like to sit up there and only have X number of dollars and 3,000 times X needs. So with that, I just thank you. I thought somebody should show up, Jim. Councilman Garden has said in the past, where are all the people? Where are all the advocates for the low income affordable housing? So one showed up tonight. Thank you.
Excuse me, Loris, I'm a little confused. You said you were confused or unclear on a goal. Can you point out which one you're talking about? I'm sorry.
On the 3rd page, and it's the, maybe I'm calling it questions about looking at the funding options as follows. And I saw those as goals. Maybe they were action steps. Okay. Yeah. Need for the assistance with deposits is where it starts out. You've got bullet points, I think 7.
Those were the public comments that we received during the workshop.
Okay. I've taken those to be what you would be building off of. So let me rephrase that. That's good. Okay. Off of those, missing were public comments about increasing housing. Yes, certainly you can rehab some of it. I encourage all of you to take a look at the MLS every week.
Well, I guess the point is the goals in front of us, that's why I asked for clarification, is to create and expand sustainable, affordable housing for LMI households through the following outcomes, which includes increasing the supply of single and multifamily housing in NRA or NRSA and citywide. So I think that
You're right, the goal.
So the council tonight is actually adopting draft goals. I think the point is, we would agree with you that there is a need, and I think that we tried to capture that. That's why I wanted clarification as to, I thought it was in there.
Yeah, it is in there.
So if it's not or unclear, then you can certainly offer input in this 30-day period of time when the goals are publicized.
Got it. So yes, so I guess we're talking about the action steps instead. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to
Appreciate it.
speak.
Thanks for showing up. Anybody else? Please. Would you please come to the microphone, because we have not to scare you, but this is on TV and being taped. So if you just introduce yourself and you make your comment.
I'm Siri Larson, and for years I've been trying to develop my property on Ontario Street. It's not too far from the new proposed park. But anyway, after they took 1/3 of an acre for the bike path, the multi-use path, I have 375 feet of frontage. And so I've always wanted to divide my property, say in half. I have 2 kids. Yeah. And I'm finding it very difficult because I have to build a sewer before I can divide it, because otherwise it can't be used to be built on. So it has no value. Like, I've been there for 43 years, and
Excuse me, is this relative to the topic on the agenda right now, or is this something else you had a question?
it's a question, because how do I find out how I can do this?
So
I need an appointment with you.
I would just, Kelly, is there anything else you want to make comments on? And then I'll go ahead and let
Oh.
Kelly answer. Is there anything else?
No, not particularly, but I wondered if that 3/4 of an acre were used for 5 townhouses instead of one really nice, energy efficient, large extended family project. If that would make it more possible to divide my property.
Okay. Thank you.
So
I'll
anyway.
let Kelly answer that question. He's our planning director. Go ahead, Vanessa. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Is there anybody else that wants to address council? We have public input right now being taken. All right, we'll close public comment. Any closing comments or questions, council? If not, entertain a motion on resolution approving the draft goals for the 2024 to 2029 proposed 5-year consolidated plan. We'll take it in 2 motions.
So that as amended?
No, oh, yes, thank you, as amended.
So moved as amended?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Entertain a motion on approving the 2024-2025 annual action plan projects as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Right. Is that what you need or anything else you need?
Yes, Mayor. Like I said, the only thing we're working on is to find out when our allocation is going to be announced. And we cannot submit the plan until we have that. So we probably, unfortunately, would have to request an extension because our plan is due to HUD by May 17th. And without our funds, we can't submit. So we're just going to ask for the maximum extension till August 16th. If we can get it submitted before then, that would be great. If not, we've made our requests and be able to make the required statutory submission date.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's take a 4-minute break, and then we will reconvene and move on to item number 29. All right, we're going to move on now to item number 29, Citywide Urban Revitalization Area Designation and Plan. Kelly?
Good evening, City Council. Tonight, we're here for the public hearing for a new initiative by the council to support construction of new ownership housing. Back in February, we talked about some suggestions from the AEDC Short-Term Housing Task Force to support additional housing construction in the community. And the direction we had at that night was to move forward with a partial property tax abatement incentive for new ownership housing. Some of the key pieces of this are that the maximum value that can be abated is $500,000. So if you built a house that was less than $500,000, your full value of your house could be abated for property taxes. If your house is more than $500,000, it's capped at that first $500,000. So if I build $1 million house, only the first 500 is capped. The next 500 is subject to full property taxes. Some of the other important elements here are that the way that this is structured is effectively you have to start new construction by December 31st of 2027. And that was at direction of council. And what I took the liberty of completing the plan with is when do the improvements need to be completed. And we added by the end of 2028. So essentially, if you pull a permit in December of 2027, you have effectively 1 year to complete that house to be able to file for an abatement. If you do not complete that improvement, you do not own that property or house, it doesn't matter that you started it earlier than December 31st of 2027, you wouldn't be eligible. So that's the way I believe is the best way to make operational the council motion to allow for construction through December 31st of 2027 was to give people 1 year to complete that improvement. So that's something that was new that we didn't really talk through in February exactly how that would work. But that's described in the council action form for you in terms of the duration of the plan. So another key element of this is that—
Can I stand that just for a second? So are there other options for us if we wanted to have a wider window for this? I mean, that seems like a slot that is pretty tight. If what we're trying to accomplish is a broader incentivization of housing, am I misunderstanding? Is it
so the original
just that year?
The original proposal was 2026, and I think it was your motion, Mr. Garten, to extend it through 2027.
Right.
And a house is typically built within 12 months. So I didn't think adding that it had to be done by the end of 28 was really a different expectation than what the motion was by council. Yes, you could extend the time horizon of eligibility if you wanted to. You can amend it in the future if you want to, but we approached this initially as a pilot program and wanted to have a shorter term rather than people maybe think they had long-term expectations of this happening. We really wanted to see, does housing really start to improve over the next 2 years?
And I don't know if this came up in the discussion with developers, but if we were to go out and talk with developers and say, is that window a sufficient time to really leverage this program? I don't want to speak for people, but do you think we're trying to anticipate how this is going to be received.
So they initially asked for a longer term, I think of 5 years. Staff's recommendation was not to start with 5 years. So in their original letter back in January of 23, they did ask for a 5-year window as a minimum to start, but that is not what was motioned to us in February.
Right. Okay.
And I've had no feedback since then. I think their letter had been put forward and council did this, and I haven't had any specific correspondence or suggestions to do something else since then.
And we can always change it, I suppose. It's a ways out.
Yeah. So if it's successful and council likes it, you can always come back and amend the duration of the plan. That's not going to be difficult to do. Just like we said, once you've adopted the citywide ordinance and created a citywide plan, amendments are not the same chore as establishing it the first time.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Other questions?
This isn't so much a question as just an affirmation, because we did get a few emails about tightening up the sustainability guidelines using the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. And I just wanted those people who emailed us to realize that council did ask staff to look at creating a second program that would work in support of the council's climate action plan goals, and that I would assume that the 2021 IECC would be part of that discussion of developing that other incentive package.
Yeah, so to close the loop on that, in February, council already directed staff to come back and report on essentially another alternative. So you would have two paths to gain property tax abatement. And I guess the understanding would be the second one, if you did green building measures, would probably have an additional incentive value to it. Absolutely, when we visit with inspection staff and energy and Ames Electric staff about options to facilitate things, we'll look at the IEC for 2021. We'll probably look at other things too. It definitely increases the energy efficiency requirements of new construction, but I don't know that it directly gets to the goal of net zero for a home. So maybe it's a first step. Maybe it's something we'll look at. We'll definitely look at it, but we need to give you some options and see what staff can actually administer. That was one of the key questions we had in February.
And that is not something that is on the table with this URA proposal for tax abatement.
Right. So just as when I answered Mr. Garton's comment, when we come back with that and say, here's 3 ways you could do it, if you pick one, you can easily amend the plan the next month to add that as an additional option. That's not going to be a difficult thing to do.
Would you just clarify for people maybe not totally familiar why council decided to go citywide and how that would apply in existing neighborhoods?
Right. So so citywide, not being able to anticipate every location that a house could be built. We have a pretty good idea of the main active subdivisions, but there could be new developments come into the city, new subdivisions started. So rather than continually creating new plans to facilitate each subdivision that came in, it was more predictable for all developers to know that if they're in the city, they're eligible for this incentive and they don't have to come and ask each time for a subdivision-based incentive. And as we look through the eligibility requirements, we did determine we could say it met the criteria under state law. And that's when we decided to move forward for the whole city rather than individual developments. Now, within existing neighborhoods, what's important, what criterion that we initially put forward was, and it's in the draft plan this way, you must have a vacant lot as of the date this is approved to be eligible to construct a new home and get abatement. And what that was trying to do at that time was to stop a tear down of an existing home and replacement with another home. If you demolished another structure, let's say you demolished a duplex, multiplex, something else that's not a single family home and created a vacant lot, you could be eligible then for creating ownership housing. It's as written, it's only that one family home that you can't demolish to create a vacant lot. Now, we did comment in the staff report that was initially a key thing to staff when there was a consideration of whether ownership or rental or both would be the program focus. I think that we actually don't have a large concern as staff anymore as an ownership focused program. If we were to remove the vacant lot expectation, the thought there was that if there was blight occurring in a neighborhood and it's beneficial to remove the blight, we would definitely want to incent the same kind of structure coming back. It's not written that way now. If council wanted to remove that criterion, it could be done. It's probably not a large number of homes that economically it would make sense to demolish them and replace them with new construction, except for if it was the investment property perspective.
But alternative ones as the council directed, right?
Council one is as drafted with a vacant lot requirement where you cannot demolish a single family home.
We can also amend that later if we have a problem with what.
You could. So if it came up that you wanted to allow for blighted properties to be eligible, that could also be any criterion can be amended in the plan at any time.
Is blight, how is blight defined?
Well, that would be a little bit in the definitional stage of adding a criterion. We have that in Campus Town as an option for starting the urban revite process. I'm not a big fan of it. It requires a visit by the building official essentially and to determine a proportion of value that is unsafe in a structure. It's a little bit more rigorous and then you would probably be able to truly do. I think that you probably wouldn't be able to write a perfect blight standard. So you probably would just remove this standard and assume that the economics of the degraded house and the lot would alone drive that decision. I just can't believe someone's demolishing a $250,000 house in Ames to build a $500,000. We're just not seeing that now. you just don't see that happen in our neighborhoods. That tear down rebuild model doesn't economically float in our neighborhoods.
But we have some houses that are in terrible repair. I have one in Parkview that's no one's living there, just animals live there, and it's falling apart, and I feel terrible for the neighbors around it. And so that would be in a situation where perhaps at some point, if we were to add, I mean, I'm not suggesting we add anything now. I'd like to see what this looks like in its current form and how it works. But that would be something I'd be interested in, because there are other houses like that, absentee owners, and they're just letting their properties decline.
Those are the ones that are hard to believe the economic value would be there, versus some of the things that the city has acquired, which are truly like dangerous buildings and have holes in the buildings. Like we've acquired a few properties right through our affordable housing program and removed them and supported new housing being constructed. Those were very low value properties when we acquired them.
Okay. All right, we'll open up public input. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic tonight? Justin?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Justin Dodge, Hunsaker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Tell you what, this is exciting. This has been a long time coming, and so applaud your efforts. Obviously, Kelly and staff have worked a lot on this and put a lot of time and effort into it, and we really appreciate it. From Hunsaker's perspective, we think this is a great opportunity. Obviously, with construction costs and interest rates, we hope that this program will push some of those clients that are on the fence, whether they'll build or not, or stay in their existing home. We hope that this pushes them over the edge, so that way it opens up their existing homes for people to continue to move up. So we think this is a great program. Other options, in talking, well, actually emailing with Kelly here in the last week or so, it's our understanding that whenever this program, if you adopt this program, whenever it's effective, whatever improvements have been completed beforehand are not eligible in the program, and whatever improvements are done afterwards would be. And so we believe, well, I mean, in Kelly's own words, it's going to be probably a little messy in 2024. We're going to have to figure out, what the value of the improvements have been before this effective date versus the value of improvements after the effective date. All things will work through, but would certainly encourage you to adopt this as soon as possible. I got an email from another individual who is looking at digging 16 townhomes, and he said, "Hey, you know what? Am I reading this right? Should I start now or wait until this is effective?" And I'm like, "Well, you make up your own mind, but if it were me, I'd push until this is effective, so that way you don't have a muddied water or a more difficult situation to sort out what the value of the work that's already been done has been done." So encourage you guys to waive the rules and do all three readings if you're so inclined. And then also a little bit onto Gloria's point about the energy efficiency. It's our understanding and our hope that we'll have a whole another program that's geared towards that energy efficiency. And we're already in talks, and we had electric services in our office a couple months ago. And our hope is that we'll design a net zero ready home in Sunset Ridge North in the city of Ames electric territory and build that this year and hopefully have that first program that, or the first home that qualifies under this new program that hasn't even been established yet. So, but we're looking ahead and also, as we're talking about the duration of the program, we understand this is a pilot program. We certainly hope with Auburn Trail that we can find some solutions to make that project a reality. And we hope that this program will get extended when Auburn Trail is a reality, so that way it encourages more growth and more opportunities, because we just finished up our last edition at Scenic Valley. So that means we have no available land on the north side of town other than Auburn Trail. So we need to bring Auburn Trail online. It's moving to the forefront and needs to be a priority for us. So
great. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Or close actually the public hearing. All right, council, is there a motion?
So if
I
I
would
can just
move-
clarify the comment about the readings, right? So what Justin said is true. The way the law is written, it's improvements that occur after the urban revive area exists. So if the 3 readings are done tonight, the ordinance should be published by Friday, making that the effective date of the ordinance. If we follow our normal procedures, it would be extended out into your first meeting in May. So that adds roughly a month. I think staff would be in favor of doing this because you have houses that are under construction now. And the sooner it's clear when the date is, the more value of an incentive that would be there. It helps houses get started maybe a month earlier, but it's up to the council whether you want to waive your rules and move forward with 2 or 3 readings tonight.
Mark, could you, council, you got an email from a constituent asking about the, waiving of the waiving the rules on the second and third reading. And I asked Mark to look into it, and he and Kelly have talked. And so the point is, would you just clarify, to address that so that constituent knows that they were at least heard in terms of their,
And I believe, and Kelly and I talked about this, I believe that the email that came from the resident of Ames was referring to different legislation that's not the issue. This is all being done under current Iowa code provisions, and there's a legislation, and Kelly can help me out on this, that I think says that we can't abate the school district property taxes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So starting after July 1st, which will be the things that are filed January of 2025, you no longer on a residential property have school taxes abated. And we've described that in this report from the beginning. And when we gave you those value estimates, we already discounted out the school taxes so that it wasn't misleading on the value of the incentive. Yeah. And I don't believe there's any relationship to when that standard goes into effect and when we adopt it. Like, we can't preempt the school tax issue by adopting this now.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question, Mark.
Yep.
So I'm trying to remember in prior situations where we're being asked to consider waiving these other readings. It seems like normally that's in the agenda, that's something that we're going to be asked to consider. Are there any limitations on us waiving those readings if it's not in the agenda and we're putting the public on notice?
No. In fact, Renee asked me that question this morning. As long as this topic is on the agenda under the open meetings law, you could go ahead. I mean, you're going to do first reading, you could go ahead and do second and, suspend the rules and do second and third readings. Typically, we put it on the agenda to give public notice, but it's not an absolute requirement that we do that.
I mean, just as a practice pointer, I think it's helpful just to err on the side of just letting the public know that we might do that, even if we don't. But I'm fine if you think that
It
we
probably
can do
would have
this.
been better to have it on there, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen.
Okay.
So,
Well, there's always the opportunity too for us to do the first reading and then at the second reading to waive the third reading. So it's kind of split the difference between, pushing it through tonight, and it's only 2 weeks more, right? Am I right on that?
Yeah. Even though it wasn't listed on the agenda that way, the council action form and the manager's recommendation has a section that explains that whole thing. So if you were to be following this, we discussed it. We just didn't write it as an alternative.
Yeah, so last paragraph, or not last, but third paragraph.
And again, the open meetings law just requires that we have an agenda with the topics on it. It doesn't really get into the specificity of those topics. So we're okay to go ahead and do that. We would not be violating the open meetings law by doing that.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yep.
Sure.
All right, I entertain the motion.
I would move alternative 1, and do you want me to read that, or we're good?
So
Grace,
just to be clear, there's 2 actions. There's a resolution that needs to be voted on and an ordinance. They're 2 separate. There's an A and a B on the agenda. Alternative 1 encompasses both, but you're probably going to have 2 votes.
Okay, would you want to rescind your, withdraw your motion and just go ahead and we'll just do, you withdraw that, Gloria, please?
I will withdraw that motion, I was
Entertain-
looking at the council action form, so
I
where do I
was-
need to look?
I was too. So
So alternative one, the first issue is to approve a resolution for conformance of the urban revite to Iowa Code 404 and approve the plan.
It's
Item
actually on the-
E is
it's on
to
the-
approve
on the
ordinance.
agenda,
Yeah,
yeah.
the agenda has it listed as an A.
I see that. So I will move that we approve the resolution of conformity to Iowa Code 404 and approve the URA plan.
is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay.
And then I would move that we approve the ordinance for the citywide designation of the URA.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules and enter into a second and third reading this evening?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion died for lack of a second.
But this is how we move things forward.
We can move them forward and have 3 readings, or we can potentially do it at the second reading, but it's rare, it used to be rare, sorry, that we waive second and third readings. It has become more frequent, but it's certainly not a given.
But respectfully, it's April and houses need to be built.
Tim.
I just like to be heard on this. We're trying to incentivize moving forward on housing, and yet a very simple thing to waive the readings and move the projects forward. We're going to sit tight and do nothing?
This whole thing is supportive, right? And us taking the proper time to do the
2 weeks.
readings is not an indication that we're not supportive of housing.
Sure it is.
All right. I think you said your piece. Council voted, or council did not support the motion. We're going to move on. Anything else that you need? Nope. All right. All right. Well, item number 30, hearing on sale of Mary Greeley Medical Center property at 2310 East 13th Street. Declare the public hearing on the sale of this property be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this particular topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion and resolution approving the sale of property at 2310 East 13th Street to Hunziker Construction Services, Inc. in the amount of $470,000.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item number 31, entertain motion on first reading of ordinance. Hold on a second. We'll go to item 31 on amending chapter 28 of the code to increase sanitary sewer rates. I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item before we go into first reading? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Entertain motion on first reading of ordinance amending chapter 28 of municipal code, section 28.3043 to increase sanitary sewer rates by 7% for bills due on or after July 1, 2024.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 32, entertain motion on first reading of ordinance on appointment of criteria for boards and commissions.
Move on first.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to discussion and communications to council. We have 3 items tonight. One is a request for alternate parking on Wilson Avenue from Lorraine Fawcett. Steve, do you have a suggestion?
Well, if you want to move this forward, you refer it to the traffic engineer, then he goes out and tries to solicit a survey from the other property owners, get you an indication how many people support the change or not. And it comes back to you to decide whether to make a change.
Can we just get a memo instead that gives us some outline of like the width of Wilson and how it compares elsewhere to other streets where we've implemented that before we do any kind of outreach process?
We can certainly get a memo back.
I don't know. I would just move that we get a memo on it because I'd like to know.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Did you catch the ayes and? All right. It was Rachel and Gloria and Anita, and then, right? And nays were Bronwyn and Tim. All right. Number 2 is a memo from Sarah Van Metren relative to an email that was sent to council on February 29th from Joyce Matters. And she does a good job of laying out the information. Is there any, I'd say that if you accept her conclusion, then we can send this to Ms. Matters and let her know, and the item is concluded.
I would move that we contact Ms. Matters and let her know what the findings are.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And then last was an email from Brian Dosher, Blue Stem Boulders, regarding an expedited zoning adjustment for a rock climbing gym.
Kelly, you want to, any questions on that? How you want to handle that? Rock climbing wall.
So I just wanted to comment. The request is very similar to the gymnastics question that you dealt with last summer. It's a GI property that they're looking at. It's a kind of a one-off recreational use. So to me, the request was exactly the same analysis I would have given you from last summer. So I don't really feel like there's any gain for asking for the back and forth of the memo. So if you're interested in the request, you could authorize them just to apply for the text amendment and be treated the same as the gymnastics last year. If you want to revisit all of that, then you could refer it to staff.
Can you remind us what we did last year?
You created the option for them to apply for a special use permit in an industrial zone. So that way, again, it's a consideration on a case-by-case basis. It's not just a blanket. You can do it anywhere.
Go ahead.
That we have staff respond to the applicant with the process we outlined previously.
Second.
Want to move ahead with
that clear for expedited?
Yeah, so then they can,
Move
on their
ahead with the
schedule, they can
request.
move ahead really quickly with that process, and it'd be the exact same thing we did last year.
Just as a point of reference, we had a climbing gym in a community south of Ames about probably 10 years ago. There was an arson, burned the place down. That was an extremely popular location. There's a huge demand for this kind of activity. I think it's a great amenity. Love the idea of seeing something like this come to Ames.
Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. All right, reports from standing agencies, boards, committees. Is there any update from the ACBB, or you haven't met since the last time?
We haven't met since the last time, but
Yeah.
go ahead with.
Go ahead,
I would
Rachel.
just mention that the annual event is this Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. at Prairie Moon. I know everyone was invited, contrary to what Steve thinks, so I'm sure you're welcome there if you're able to make it.
Thank you.
They also host an innovation lunch club. And so April 26th at noontime, 11:15 to 12:30. The individual speaking will be Jessica Bell from the ISU Translational AI Center. She's the program manager. And so this is something new that they've been trying, are these innovation lunches to make us aware of what else is out there in terms of partnerships. So I will forward that on.
Thank you. All right, AEDC, any reports?
Nope, haven't met.
Okay. Story County Emergency Management meets next Wednesday night. And how about transit?
No, we haven't
No
met
reports?
since the last time.
All right, thank you. Council comments. Gloria, we'll start with you.
I have none.
All right, Tim?
I emailed the council about a proposal that we would consider doing some mobile tours of infrastructure projects in the metro area that are projects that the council either has an interest in or things that we as a council will be doing in the next couple of years to help us to better understand the kinds of best practices and
Did
things
you
that
mean
have been
the
done in
Des
the area.
Moines metro area?
Yeah, the Des Moines metro area.
Oh.
Right. And I think there's a lot of flexibility in the kinds of things that we would see. But I think there's benefit to actually seeing those projects boots on the ground.
So I'm interested in that. I'm wondering, is that something that we would need to get approval for because it's an open meeting? Or, because it seems like if we have a meeting and it's someplace other than Ames, it's not really all that open for Ames residents. And I don't know whether there's a definition that precludes that, or maybe we just go and see things and we don't deliberate and therefore it's not an open meeting.
If you don't deliberate, it's not an open meeting. So you can all be together, but as long as you're not conducting city business or discussing city business, then it's not an open meeting.
That would be kind of tricky.
The open meeting law does say that the meetings have to be held in I forget the exact wording, but a place that's convenient for the residents. So that would argue against holding a meeting like somewhere else other than Ames.
So it could just be like what we do with the Chamber of Commerce when a whole bunch of us go on an inner city and we
Sure.
see things, but
Right.
we don't deliberate.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Were you making a motion about that?
That is my motion.
Second.
So I wonder if we could consider other cities, just thinking it would be helpful to get to other cities in Iowa our size also beyond Des Moines. But I don't know.
Yeah, I just mentioned the metro area just because it
Mhm.
seems, because of
Close.
proximity,
Mhm.
honestly, and you have lots of different options within the metro cities.
Okay. Start there.
But I think that I'm not certainly married to that idea. If there were projects in Marshalltown or surrounding communities that would be helpful for us. The question is what's going to help us make better decisions?
Mhm.
And so these aren't just field trips for the sake of field trips, but they're things that are strategically aimed at helping us make better decisions for our residents.
Mhm. Okay. I'm okay starting with Des Moines and then seeing where it takes us from there. Thank you.
So how would the destinations be determined? And what would be specifically looking at in these trips?
Well, I think that the staff could work with us to see what our areas of interest. I provided in my email, I think, a dozen different possibilities, ranging from things that are more climate oriented to things that are economic development, recreation amenities. Let me just give you an example. Ames is desperate for recreational facilities along the lines of a field house. We could go to Nevada. Nevada built their facility for a very modest amount of money. We could go to Nevada and imagine what that kind of facility would do for our children here in Ames. So I think it's very open. I would like this to be council-driven with staff direction.
Okay. All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else?
And just the last council meeting, I was wishing our Cyclones the best as they participated in the tournaments, and very proud of both the men's and women's teams, basketball teams this year. Phenomenal seasons. So thanks, Cyclones.
Thank you.
Nothing for me tonight.
And wrestling had a great season as well. So, yeah, that's it.
Nothing for me.
All right. Just for those of us who enjoy Ryman Gardens, I just want to give a nod to Ed Lyon. He's retirement on Friday, and he's done a great job leading a tremendous asset in our community. So wish him all the best in that. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.